Hi, welcome. Another Friday, episode 105 of Heavy Metallurgy. Alan, it's good to see you. And you've weathered the storm. You've come through victorious, sword raised high. Your steel is true. You're done with the semester.
Cheers. I like my wine like I like my fire trucks. Red.
That looks like fruit punch. I'm sorry. You're lying.
It's red Gatorade.
I was going to say, that doesn't look like wine.
I wanted something that fit the motif for tonight's topic, and this was as close as I could come with 12 minutes.
Without running to the corner store.
Yeah, I don't exactly, have a blood bag on hand or anything.
No.
It's Goth night, not vampire night. Although those two do kind of bleed into one another a little bit.
They do, for sure.
There we go.
And yes, we're talking about Goth for sure tonight. But first and foremost, we're on Twitch, and if that interests you, go over to Twitch and subscribe there. We're also on Instagram, Heavy Metallurgy channel. Go over there and subscribe to that. I post on it regularly with what's going on here at the channel. We are not on Facebook. I probably should do that, but I'm just so overwhelmed with taking care of a million different social media things. But Alan, how have you been? What's going on? And you still spinning the new Metallica, I hear.
No, you hear wrong. I played it for a week. I played it about 6 times.
There must be a bad connection coming in here.
Must be. If you were here in person, you'd get a face full of red Gatorade. So.
Right.
But no, it's been just a busy week at work, wrapping up the semester, but that is done. And so it's time to take it easy and have some fun talking some metal. And this will be a fun one. This was a show we almost had put together, I think way back in January, kind of early this year.
Yeah.
And then, schedule changed at the last second. And it's, taken us a while to be able to circle back. But we finally have. And have brought on a really cool guy who we have not had on the show before. So.
Which is odd because he's awesome, and you've seen his work for the show. First we're going to bring him on, and then we'll show his work here. Let's get him on. Everybody, welcome Justin from Vesteban's Blood Box YouTube channel. Welcome. Good to see you.
You too. Thank you for having me here.
Are we allowed to clap on a Goth episode, or do we have to sigh melancholically or something?
I don't know.
I'm not quite sure about the rules of interaction here.
No smiling. Similar to black metal.
I guess it's good you made it here before we all die.
Right.
It's fine.
Is that the right tone? I'll figure it out as we go. Don't worry.
Accurate.
Well, for those of you who don't know, this image right here was drawn by this gentleman. It's on our latest round of t-shirts, Necromantical Streams. Justin did the illustration for us, which he did an awesome job. So go check those out in the link below. Justin, you are quite an accomplished artist. What has been going on with you? I mean, I know you're busy. There's always something on your table. You've branched out. You've done some stuff for bands and logos and all sorts of stuff. What's been going on, and how can people get a hold of you in case they need to commission a job?
For sure. Well, one, thank you. Thank you both for commissioning me to do that one. That was a lot of fun. And
hell yeah.
Also sort of solidified a little further me doing more metal type stuff. I do have a website to start with, vestebancomics.com. That's got a lot of artwork and things on it. It's also got the email if anybody does want to commission anything. So just a heads up, though, I have shifted gears for this year, and I'm working on the next Feather album. So that's what I've been doing lately. So hopefully by the end of the year, that'll be coming out. But also exciting news is I will get to debut some of my comic art in New York on June 1st. I got invited to display some at a gallery there. So that's like a childhood dream to get to do that. So I'm pretty excited.
That's awesome. Cool. Did I get the tag right in the chat? Is this correct?
That's perfect. Yep. Vestebancomics.com. Finally, It's been years since that's been up. So
definitely go check out that website. And if you need something commissioned for your band or your website or whatnot, I am sure this gentleman can help you out, as he did us. He did a great job, and he works really fast. Also, he has a YouTube channel called Vesteban's Blood Box. He hasn't been doing much on it lately because I'm sure he's been super busy. But what's been going on with your channel and any plans in the future for your channel?
Yes. So that's been very intermittent just because of art and doing the music stuff. But I have videos that should be up there soon. A couple that are finished. I just need to edit them. So definitely go subscribe. There's lots of back videos, and there will be more things coming soon. The most recent one that'll be coming up is a battle jacket video where I make one from start to finish.
Nice.
And kind of show how to do it, because it's one of those things, once you figure it out, it's super easy, but it's when you don't know anything about sewing, it seems kind of daunting, but it's quite easy.
When I had to touch I always get the liquid stitch and just glue my shit on, but then I started trying to sew them. I had to have like a FaceTime with Becca Lunn, Austin from Panopticon's wife, and I'm like, what is this thing? And I can't get the thread through the needle. And she's like, well, you use that to thread. I mean, she gave me a whole tutorial over the FaceTime. It was great. I don't remember any of it, but if I ever go to sew again, I'm sure I can hit her up again. It's definitely helpful.
Well,
to
and that's
learn, someone show you how to do it.
For sure. And that was the deal I made with Katie, my wife, is she said, I'm going to show you how to do one patch, and that's it. You got to do the rest. And so I focused really hard for that first one, and it's easy.
Yeah, it is easy. It really is. But yeah. What else was I going to? Oh, you mentioned Feather.
Mm-hmm.
That's your project. It's Dungeon Synth, but it's a little bit more than just a Dungeon Synth project, wouldn't you say?
Yes. So the first album was fairly straightforward Dungeon Synth. This new one, I considered calling it something else, but I figured most people who are kind of solo artists, just whatever they do, they put it under the same name. So I'm just sticking with that. Yep. This one is gonna venture into the realm of DSBM and some black metal, but I've also ended up with banjos and stuff in there too. So we'll see what it ends up being.
Now the first one came out on what's the name of the label? I can't remember.
Folkfinger Records.
Folkfinger, that's right. Will the new one be coming out on that as well?
Yep, that's the plan.
Awesome.
And then also just shout out real quick to Mark over at Folkfinger. He has another label called Reclusion Records, which is a goth label. So check that out since we're talking about that tonight.
Awesome. Great. Yeah. Okay. Alan, did you have anything to ask Justin before I start rambling about other things?
What is your name?
Justin.
What is your quest?
To talk about goth music.
What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow?
African or European?
Okay, we're on the same page here. Absolutely. We're good to go. He's cool. He passed the test.
Okay. We are the knights who say nee.
Nee. I love that movie dearly.
Love it. It's so good.
Somewhere in the house right now, my wife is rolling her eyes. Yeah, I can literally hear her bellowing "nerds" from the back end of the house.
That's right. That's right. She procreated with one, so that makes her one by association.
Yep. Yeah, she married into the bloodline. There's no avoiding it.
So I guess before we get into showing things off, Gothic music is kind of a pretty big umbrella that holds a lot of things underneath it. I think a lot of people have an idea what goth music is. But it, for me, it encompasses a lot of different other genres. Let's start with you, Justin. What do you think? What's the best way to describe Gothic music?
Yeah, so kind of in preparation for this, I did go back and try to look it up a little bit, and it is wildly massive on how much is included within the goth realm. So overarching, I would say darker, but romantic in some level. So, black metal.
Cheesily so.
Yes, which is an important aspect of it, is that there is some cheese somewhere in there. Generally, traditional goth has a lot of references to old film, books, things of that nature. Obviously, like Bela Lugosi, when he played Dracula, Nosferatu, lots of vampire things. But Yeah, it's a little bit tough to describe. I grew up, I was in high school and junior high in the 2000s. So that was my first introduction, which is a very different era than, say, 1985. So,
yeah.
Loose interpretation. Hard to answer.
What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And, Jack's comment, from a minute ago that, it's maybe more of, a description than a genre. There may be something to that, like Justin. I kind of was, looking back, into some stuff this week, because when I sat down to start pulling records for this, I'm like, what exactly qualifies as gothic metal? What qualifies as gothic rock? Where's the dividing line? And something I kind of kept running into is almost any band I could think of, that I might describe as gothic, I could also describe as another genre just fine, and usually do. So yeah, I tried to do some digging. And, I think with gothic rock, you can make a case, that there, maybe that is a genre, that there's, some, distinctions in sound there that you're expecting to hear, like Justin said, vocal, lyrics that will focus on, sadness, loneliness, kind of, a nostalgia, looking back at things, sense of alienation, sometimes. But, there are certain musical traits that go along with those lyrical themes that, you often get, like, a very, simple, repetitive drum patterns. You get guitars with a lot of reverb on them. You will often get vocals that, whether they're male or female, are going to be a little bit, in the higher range, though that's not a requirement. They can also be ones that are in the lower range. Yeah, so with gothic rock, there's at least a few things I think you can use to describe it. It gets a lot harder with gothic metal because, a lot of the stuff I kept pulling is like, yeah, this is kind of gothic metal, but you could also just call it doom death. This one's kind of gothic metal, but you could also call it symphonic metal just fine. And so, that's something I was wondering myself and kind of batting around all week is, does gothic really count as a, subgenre of metal? Or is it a little bit more like the tag Christian metal, where you're really focusing more on a few of the aesthetics around the music, that you need a certain lyrical theme, you kind of need a certain look, but there's not a ton of features to the music itself that make it different from, other genres that are already more established. And another thing is too, as I'm sure we'll see with the albums we pull tonight, those kind of, gothic tendencies, the darker outlook, the sadness, the loneliness, what, the atmospheric, synthesizers or keyboards, that stuff can be used in so many other genres. So you can get, a lot of bands and a lot of styles can incorporate those elements and start sounding kind of gothy, but is that really their main subcategory or subgenre? I don't know. I'm interested to see what y'all think about it, because I had a hard time pinning down gothic metal in particular, more so than gothic rock.
For me, the gothic, I see where you're coming from, because metal, it's still metal. They just kind of tinker with the influence a little bit. Maybe the fashion. I mean, look at, I don't have any. I was going to pull a Cradle of Filth album. I don't own any.
Yeah, you're wearing corsets instead of bullet belts.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, their whole motif is very much, gothic, Vampire Lestat, or Anne Rice novel interpretation of it.
Yep.
Just that whole romanticism, like Justin mentioned earlier, the romanticism of it.
Yep.
So I mean, it's hard to. I mean, a lot of these bands I pulled tonight, they've got influences of it. Are they a straight up goth metal band? It's so hard to. Typically, I've noticed when you start doing searches online for gothic metal, it's a lady singer. That's usually one of the telltale signs. Whether it's right or not, I don't know. But for me, circling around to the question here, what is gothic? I think, because a lot of things that I've always just taken as gothic, like Susie and the Banshees, that's more post-punk than it is. I mean, I think she embraced it as it went, but I'm thinking of people I grew up with and went to high school with, or, girlfriends of friends of mine. They were goth chicks. And maybe goth is more of the fashion statement side of it, and it just got kind of pinned on a musical subgenre, but which a lot of the bands leaned into. I mean, was it that album by the Damned? Was it Phantasmagoria? I mean, that was kind of a pseudo goth thing, but they didn't really sound goth to me. You know, they had that, and you have that one there. There you go. Was it Phantasmagoria? Yeah.
Yep. And yeah, good point, because this is like, you see goth, yeah, that's goth. You listen to it and you go, yeah, but is it?
Yeah, that's a good point, Justin. It's kind of like, I know goth when I see it. I don't always know it when I hear it.
Right, exactly. And a lot of things that you've been working under, Bauhaus or Love and Rockets. Love and Rockets might be a little poppier than Bauhaus, but it's basically Bauhaus without Peter Murphy. The whole Bela Lugosi's dead. They leaned into the whole the vampire thing. They were the house band in the Bowie movie The Hunger. It's a vampire movie. So I mean, you can all trace the lineage back. Is it to Bowie? Is Bowie the first goth rock guy? I mean, he was the androgynous space opera weirdo, heroined out. Yeah, Joy Division, another I was going to pull Joy. I've got all the Joy Division stuff. I love them, but I have a hard time calling them goth. It's post-punk to me. It's so weird. It's so hard. It's a lot harder to pick for this than I thought it would be, to be honest.
Yeah. So, something else that happens, and folks already mentioned this in the chat with like the term death rock. There's a lot of names applied to this kind of music, and are they synonyms, or do they mean slightly different, kind of subgenres? Is death rock the same as gothic rock, or is death rock a very specific niche within goth rock? And the same, you get into, dark wave, and there's cold wave, and, there's at least one other wave, I'm sure, lots of waves. But yeah, where do some of those lines, cross to? Because there also is going to be a bleed over into, electronic and industrial forms of music, not just punk or post-punk or metal, but goth, the same kind of, again, imagery, attitude, like folks are saying in the chat. It gets into those genres as well. How electronic can goth get before it has to be called something else? I don't know.
Well, and so this actually touches on a lot of points where this did begin to get defined. So I was able to find, when I was kind of looking up some stuff, there is a definitive moment where goth, as we know it today, was defined. And it was actually with Jim Morrison of The Doors. I wrote it down here. There was an interview in 1967 with him, and I guess it was in an old wine cellar. Or of course, Jim Morrison has fluffy open shirt. So when the reporter went down there, he's like, yeah, oh yeah, it's just high as hell. It just, that whole vibe. And so the reporter said, taken directly from it, it was the perfect room to honor the gothic rock of The Doors. So that was literally the moment that term came about. Now, and people in the chat have already said this too. So post-punk, pretty definitively, it was like 78, 79. That's when you get Susie and the Banshees, Joy Division coming out. Bauhaus has their first release. And then really quickly in the 80s, you start getting it to branch off, because, you have like, and even the 90s, Depeche Mode's in there, but also is Devo post-punk? Not goth, but is it getting in the post-punk?
I would call them post-punk.
Can see that. Yep.
Yeah. So there's a really fast, like, this branching off from this very short period. So, but it also started off as an aesthetic, not really music per se. It was because of this dark cellar that it got its name. So,
yeah. Another element, all good points, Justin. One other element just to throw out there into the mix that we haven't touched on yet is that, at least with some bands, that fall under the kind of the goth umbrella, there's often a very deliberate camp element playing into, the vampire, the Count Dracula, the spooky haunted house kind of stuff, but in a very non-serious way. It's very tongue-in-cheek. Now some people take it a little too seriously among the fan base, perhaps, but with some of the bands, some of the earlier examples I was looking up this week too, they were obvious callbacks to some of the 60s novelty bands, that, came up. There was a small cottage industry of these in the 60s after the success of, some random hits like the Monster Mash. Well, hey, if one guy can sing a crazy Halloween song about monsters and, conquer the pop charts, there were other bands that tried doing it as well. So that's an element with always completely bleak and dreary and sad. Sometimes it's meant to be kind of silly and campy and fun, but still fall under that same category.
Yep.
Yeah, spot on. And it really is. I mean, it's talk about a genre, of course, again, broad term, just totally embracing. You can go, I have a goth outfit that I use when we go to the Ground Zero nightclub here in Minneapolis, which is a goth nightclub. And I got it all from Spirit of Halloween. Every piece of it.
Nice.
So, yeah, I mean, that just goes hand in hand.
you mean you didn't take it out of a coffin in the basement of a dungeon of a castle at midnight?
Well, I pulled the Fields of the Nephilim and I threw some flour on it to make it look dusty. So,
well played, sir. Well played.
We're just talking in the chat about the old Dejarum clove cigarettes. It brings back memories, and they made them. The U.S. banned them, so now that you can go buy Dejarum clove cigarettes now, but they're basically cigarillos now. They basically put clove flavoring on the tip of the filter, and the rest of it's just like a mini cigar. It's not the same. I like the old brown wrapper where you can see
I still have a couple of packs from before the ban tucked away, sealed.
Well, if you and I ever get together, we're cracking those bitches open, hawking up a turkey tasting lung. It's going to be great.
I've got two packs left. I never smoked a lot, but when I did, yes, that
love
was
them.
my jam.
Fun fact, first cigarette I smoked was a clove cigarette, and I did it up in my bedroom with the window open. And my mom came up and she's like, "Stop burning that incense." Because it was going
yeah, that's not a smell that's going to dissipate out the wind. It permeates. It's a definite, yeah. Good times. I used to smoke a lot of those. A buddy of mine I would always bum them off him too. Great. And I walk by the cigar shop downtown and walk in and buy a pack of the fake ones, and it's just not the same. Not the same. They still make you feel like crap because there's so much junk in it, but anyway, we're off topic a little bit here, but okay. So we've determined that Gothic, it's impossible to pigeonhole, basically. I mean, we all have ideas what it is, and a lot of the stuff I'm going to show tonight is in that nebulous territory, inspired by what we think Goth is, but is it straight up Goth? I don't know.
There may be a lot of arguing. Yeah, what I'm hearing tonight.
No, there won't be any arguing. I really struggled for tonight. I found a lot of things I thought I had, I got rid of. So it is what it is, but we'll get through this. It'll be good. It'll be fun.
Yeah, I think we've got, I'm sure we've all got some cool stuff. And I'm sure folks in the chat will have some cool stuff. They're already throwing around a lot of names and discussing which albums by this band should count or shouldn't count.
Yep.
I know folks were discussing some of the early Cure albums. Where does the Cure stop being goth, for example? So all good questions. Glad folks are tuning in and joining us. Hope everybody enjoys the topic. I think Justin picked a really good topic for us.
Definitely, and one we probably wouldn't have picked on our own. So that's another reason why we get guests on. We usually throw it out to them first. What do you want to talk about? Because it steers us in a different in a different direction on occasion, which is good.
Yeah. We want it to be something the guest is passionate about, and you're going to come up with ideas that we won't.
Yep.
And if it was left to Marty and I, it'd be Halloween, album by album for the next 27 weeks.
No. But well, cool. Let's get this rolling. Justin, we're going to start with you. You're the guest. You are first, and where are we going to start off here? We'll do one at a time and go around the class.
So I debated on going strictly in chronological order, but I'll be honest, this is the band I start with that I know a little bit more about, so I'm just going to start here. Because I don't know his name, the lead singer of this band is considered
Andrew Eldritch.
Sisters of Mercy?
Yeah.
Okay, you got
Andrew Eldritch.
And this album in particular, now, First, Last, and Always is, of course, great album, definitely the beginning of goth, but I think this is the one that really solidifies it because you got the drum machine,
Dr. Avalanche,
strong bass. Like, this is pinnacle goth. Even the, of course, album cover is perfect for it. It's minimalistic, it's kind of goofy, looks like it could be a Lost Boys cover kind of thing. And of course,
I can't see the new Lamp of Murmur album without thinking of that album.
I know.
Right. Well, it's
not the new one, their
directly.
last one.
Yeah. And it was taken directly from this.
Oh, yeah.
And this album has, I mean, this is still referenced a lot to this day. When we get later on, I've got bands that directly say, unashamedly, I'm ripping from this album because it's just so massively influential. And if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of blend a couple here because I've got, like I said, a lot of newer stuff. But the First, Last, and Always, of course, spawned this, and also The Mission.
Yep.
Oh, nice. Yep.
And this is kind of that example of where right here you have a pretty big split of what goth is, because here's your moody, sultry, kind of campy, dark goth, and then
repetitive.
The Mission, repetitive, yep, very repetitive, drum machine.
Yep.
And then The Mission, for those who don't know, is pretty much the rest of the band that was playing on First, Last, and Always for Sisters of Mercy.
These guys.
Those guys, yeah. A lot of infighting with them, and so they split, and the rest of the band went on to create this album, which is far more of your sparkly, uplifting kind of goth, if you will. And it's kind of only goth because of the era it came out and where it comes from. I feel like is why it can be put in that same realm. And then we got this gem between the two, which is the Lawsuit album. So the story on this is when the band split because, what's his name again? From Sisters
Andrew Aldrich.
Andrew Aldrich. This album was songs that were going to end up being on Floodland, and the guy from The Mission had songs he wanted on it, and Andrew said, I'm not playing any of your songs, they suck, essentially. And so that caused a huge fight. So the rest of the band was going to create a new band called The Sisterhood, of course, which is directly from Sisters of Mercy.
Yep.
And so Andrew very quickly, if I'm not mistaken, in a week, recorded this under The Sisterhood to screw them out of being able to use that name and get the copyright for it. So this is a
that
weird
sounds like
album.
something he would do. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Right. And then this is also weirdly the start of like a third aspect of goth, because you get a lot more of the electronica. Some people say this is almost a techno album because it was done so quickly. It's primarily drum machine, really thrown together. The song Finland Red, Egypt White, the lyrics to that are just either a user manual or something along the lines for an AK-47. He just reads it directly off of the page. So It's a weird one. But yeah, all of this is like a really tumultuous and also inspiring fast era of goth, because it all branches off right here from this band. Now there's other bands, of course, we'll talk about that are also at the same time doing things, but this is a good place to start because it's probably one of the most iconic true goth records that are out there. So,
right.
Yeah.
And I got to say, The Mission, you really got to, I think the earlier stuff is probably I bought a later cassette. It's crap. It's really jangly pop. It's bad. I mean, I got it for like $1 at the local store. I'm like, oh, cool. I've been meaning to check this out. But no, I've been told by people that the early stuff is really good, but the later stuff, it gets really bad. Not good.
I have a lot of them on cassette. This is the only one I listen to. This album's great. This album is fantastic. Now, again, it is more like pop goth is a good way to say it.
Yeah.
They're talented guys, but it does get really into that realm. It's almost more new wave's not right because it's not as digital, if you will, or along those lines. But this is worth listening to if you're going to get into old school goth. Should be a part of it. So
right. Okay. Nice start. Nailed it right on the head right away. Alan, what do you got?
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that one briefly before showing my first one because I'd pulled the mission too. I just pulled Children instead of God's Own Medicine, and you described them well. Justin Wayne Hussey very much was going for a more commercially accessible kind of take on Goth, and did it extremely well.
Which even Sisters of Mercy did too on that
Vision thing
with the dude from Sig Sputnik, Tony or James. What was his name? I can't remember.
I don't remember either. But yeah. With Vision thing, he was definitely kind of going maybe like a goth rock and roll kind of goth and roll. There, we need a new subgenre, goth and roll. On Vision thing, the mission didn't really go in that direction. They just they kept a lot of the trappings of goth, but did make it into something that was a little more digestible. It lost the drum machine, or a little bit the harshness or edginess of it, but I don't know which one you got, Marty. I like a lot of the missions stuff. I want
to say the Relic or something. The Relic. It's got a couple masks on the cover. It's blue. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, that is a later one. And some of those I don't know. But they did a lot of good stuff over time. But most folks do like the earlier, generally the earlier the better. But I think up through at least the latest 80s and even into the early 90s, they were still putting out quality stuff. Just because they split off from Sisters, they should not be sold short. I always liked Wayne's voice quite a bit. His voice is better suited for that kind of more accessible, a little warmer tone than Eldritch's was. His was more suited, for the darker kind of pure goth stuff. Anyway, on to my first real pick here. This is one that I think for gothic metal does get cited quite a bit for good reason. I only have it on digital, so I'm going to use the phone a bit tonight. But it's Theater of Tragedy with the Velvet Darkness They Fear. This came out in 96 when you had a lot of groups that were starting to experiment more with these kind of different styles of darker music and stuff. And it was a Norwegian band. It was one of the first bands to start messing with the kind of Beauty and the Beast style lyrics, which is something that if you're poking around for info on gothic metal, it's a trait that a lot of lists will pop up. It's like, they'll have like one female doing the higher pretty vocals, and then they'll have a male doing some kind of deeper, gruffer vocals, whether it's death metal or not in tone. Other things, with this album in particular in their catalog, the lyrics for this one, they're not only really focus on all kind of the sadness, the nostalgia, the romantic angle that Justin mentioned, but they're all written in kind of ye old Shakespearean English, and they're sung that way. So the lines are all like ye doth not feel the consequences of thine heart. It's interesting that they could found a way to sing it in what was at the time a modern kind of metal sound, because that those kind of words do not necessarily roll off the tongue easily for folks these days. Theater of Tragedy, also known for this, was the female vocalist in this was Liv Christine, who went on to do Leaves' Eyes, which is another one that is kind of one of those. Is it count as goth? Some people say yes, some people say no. I think folks in general, they would agree that, Theater of Tragedy in this era of the band would definitely, be a good candidate for poster child of gothic metal in the mid 90s. There started being these kind of compilation, the Beauty and Darkness. There were 2 or 3 volumes of that, I think, that featured this kind of stuff that was popular at the time. I hadn't played this in forever, so it was interesting to go back and check it out again this week. It's well done. The album's put together. It's got the good atmosphere. There's a very good contrast between Liv's vocals and I don't remember who does the male vocals for the band. At the time, when it came out, it was a little bit of a head scratcher for a lot of folks. People weren't really sure what to make of this kind of dual vocal style or how seriously to take it. And so they always kind of felt at the time a little bit like a B tier band. But I think this one has found its home over time and definitely has its fan base. So this was one of the first things I thought about when we decided on gothic metal. Sorry, I'm tilting the phone the wrong way, but that's because it's going to sleep. But yeah, I think early theater of tragedy can definitely count for this kind of style.
And the cover speaks to me. Always has, always will. It's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's good cover.
Yeah. The font and the purple, gold font, purple. It's aesthetically put together.
Looks like she's on a Helix mattress, which is really good for her back support.
Based on other traits on the cover, she probably needs some extra back.
She needs a little extra support after a long day of hard work. Okay. Since Justin jumped in with the classic, I'm going to as well. And this is a project or a band that comes out of the post-punk era, not going to lie. And these are two of my favorites by Susie and the Banshees, Tinderbox and Hyena. Mm-hmm. This album in particular, this one has Robert Smith from The Cure on guitar. Back when they were basically all just hanging out and doing copious amounts of pills and doing all sorts of fun drugs and making music. He's also playing live on the live concert album / video called Nocturne. Really good. He's a great guitar player. Doesn't always get to maybe showcase it as much in The Cure, but he's a really good guitar player. Great songs on here. Dear Prudence. I mean, that's one you turn at Sirius XM. That one's always on. Great stuff. But this is my favorite. There is a level of atmosphere on this record that really is hard to come by in any genre. I don't know how they did it. It just has a very dreamy focus about it. From the color of the cover to the image on the cover, Candyman, Sweetest Chill, This Unrest, Cities and Dust. That's an earworm song forever. You hear that song, it's in your head for a month. Cannons, Parties Fall, 92 Degrees. Great album. Here's she's leaning into the goth thing. The big eye makeup, the black hair. I mean, she fell into embracing the outfit perfectly. Is this straight up goth? I don't know. It's maybe a little more alternative type music. 120 minutes for those old MTV viewers back in the day. They had a show called 120 Minutes or Alternative Nation, but I always thought of this as, goth. She's kind of the queen of it. Whether this is goth or not, I don't know, but I really love her stuff. I've got pretty much all of her records except maybe 3 or 4, and she's got a bunch. So good stuff. Check out Susie Sue rules, and her then husband Budgie, great drummer, absolutely great drummer. They also, the two of them together, had a side project called Creatures, very percussive and weird. I don't think they're married anymore. They got a divorce, but anyway, check out Susie Sue. Good stuff.
Yeah, that's a good early pick, Marty. And she's someone who came straight out of the earliest days of the punk scene.
Yep.
I mean, when you look at a lot of like early pictures of Sex Pistols and their early gigs from like even 75, she's one of the perennial characters somewhere in the background.
Well, she was on that interview show where
she was the whole reason that whole incident happened on the Tony.
Yeah, because he was like hitting on her. Yeah, he was.
Yeah, he was basically started kind of he was drunk on air and kind of started skeezing on her, and she was just kind of winding him up and kind of playing him off a bit, and that's when
Steve.
When Steve, kind of, started in on it with, you dirty fucker, comments. And he's like, what'd you say? I said, you're skeezing on like, a 17-year-old girl here on, public television while you're drunk. What do you think I'm going to call you? So, yeah. She was actually the kind of the instigator of that, very infamous, interview that
Bill Grundy. That's it. I couldn't think of his
Grundy,
name.
Yes. Thank you. Couldn't get it. I was thinking Tony, but he's from the Factory record label with Joy Division and all that. But that all came back to Susie. She's the whole reason that happened.
All right. Justin.
Yeah, so not to get just something worth talking about is as I've obviously gotten into black metal too, and same with goth. And as you start looking at this, it's amazing how many different genres of music we listen to now were directly influenced by punk. Like, this makes sense because of post-punk, but I read that Necro Butcher book where he was basically like, first wave black metal bands were what we were listening to, but it was the punk scene that really sparked everything. So, no denying. In that first Sex Pistols show, there was a bunch of, Susie and the Banshees started a band. The guys from Joy Division were there. They started their punk band called Warsaw.
Yep.
There was like a whole shit ton of UK punk bands that started out of seeing the Sex Pistols play. They were all in attendance.
Yeah, it was, I think, a famous show in July '75 in Birmingham, England. The tagline has always been, every single person that attended that show started a band or a label or a zine or something.
Which is cool.
There's actually funny because there's an entire cottage industry around trying to figure out who was actually at that show and who just claims to have been there, because it really became one of those touchstone events for the scene over time. And so you could probably find thousands of people claiming, I swear I was there, but most of the people who were there are like, I don't even know if there were 100 people at this gig. There's no way all these assholes that claim they were at that show were actually there. And so people will go through like old photographs, and I think there's a little bit of film footage from that night, and trying to identify like the backs of heads and things like that to prove that this person was really here, that person really wasn't. And I'm blanking on his last name too, but Tony something, the guy who ended up running Factory Records, he's always was one of the big controversial figures at that gig, because he swore to the day he died he was at that show, and tons of people swear that he was not, that they would have noticed him if he was there, and none of them did. So yeah, that's a thing too. People obsess over strange things.
Well, it's always that. I mean, it still happens today, but it sort of it was a resurgence of in the 2000s of the like, I found them before they were big kind of idea. And so
the hipster kind of outlook. Yep.
Well, it's
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's like in college I learned about this with the history of photography book that came out in like the 60s or something. Everybody wanted to be in it so badly, including people when the author said, oh, this person doesn't qualify because their art isn't good enough. That was better than not being in it at all. Not being in it at all was like the worst thing that could happen, because it means you weren't part of it. So it's better to be at the show than not.
And it's really funny, all this talk about the Sex Pistols. I love the Sex Pistols. I like the music they put out, good stuff. But all the hubbub and inspiration that they kicked off, and they were really just a boy band. they were a boy band. They were put together by a guy. We're going to put this guy like Sid. Sid was at the right place at the right time, but he couldn't play bass, and he looked the part, so he's in the band type of thing. And it's crazy. It's crazy how something so influential was just kind of, put together by a guy, a guy that owned a clothing store. Anyway.
And his wife, who was a very edgy fashion designer.
Yep.
So next up, I've got one, but I'm going to let you, after I do this, you can talk about it when you're ready, because I know you love it. So I'm going to let you have that one. You know what it is.
That might be the humongous stack I just went to get.
Did you have to dust the flour off that stack?
Yeah, a little bit. There was a little bit of lime on my duster. Getting it. I had to take off my glacier glasses to find it, but anyway.
So, of course, most of these bands from the 80s are going to be from the UK, because again, coming from the same punk scene that was coming from there, a lot of these artists stem from that. This is one of the bands I think is part of kind of the trifecta of true punk, if you will, or true goth, I mean, but not talked about as much, which is All About Eve.
Never heard of.
Yeah, not one a lot of people have, but involved. In fact, I've got his name pulled up here because I'm really bad with names. Where is it? Tim Brashano, who is the guitarist of this band, played on Vision Thing from Sisters of Mercy. Oh. And then also there's some things, they did some stuff with Philip Gilmore and a bunch of other people. So very big involved in the goth scene, but one of the lesser known bands. Similar, it's like the perfect cross between, I would say, what we talked about with The Mission and Sisters of Mercy. There's a little more goth vibes to it, but it's definitely almost like a fantastical kind of goth sound. Not as much as like some of the more symphonic stuff that would come later on in the 90s and particularly 2000s. But this is in there. Really worth checking out. The lead singer, Julianne Regan, fantastic vocals. This poor band kind of got big because of an incident that happened on a show. I think it was on the BBC, where they were playing live and there were some technical issues where they weren't able to play live. So they had a backing track, but those same technical issues caused the backing track to screw up. So it was very much a Milli Vanilli type scenario.
Oops.
Now it was the only time they ever played like lip syncing. But it was, of course, it's the one time where it's public. Everybody sees it.
Yeah.
And they had a lot of shit for it afterwards. But this is really one to check out. Again, if you're getting into the 80s goth stuff. Had a couple albums. Second album's pretty good too, but this is kind of the quintessential along the lines of what we're talking about. The first album. Just self-titled too. All About Eve.
Okay.
So check that one out.
Learn something new. Never heard of it. There, of course, there's going to be a lot I've not heard of here.
Yeah, same here. That one's completely new to me. All right. This came up, but this angle on goth came up tangentially in the chat a little bit earlier, so good time to go ahead and bring it up. Bands like Nightwish. Now, for a lot of folks, the knee-jerk reaction is that's not goth, and I would tend to agree. But it's leaning into it. This is, again, where a lot of the sort of goth aesthetics are wearing off onto, in this case, the symphonic metal style. As we discussed earlier, it can do that with a lot of different styles, and it certainly happens with this style. I mean, again, you've got the female vocalist, you've got everybody looking, kind of, wistful, a little bit sad, looking off into the, a distance. You've got, the kind of, romantic sad song titles. This one's got Dead Gardens, Romanticide, Ghost Love Score.
That's really a classic in their catalog, isn't it?
It's a very good album. I like this one. The cover art, very much goths. They love old statues on the album covers. Again, they play into that sad, longing historical perspective. This one has that in spades. The vocals are pretty. They used a little bit, of the back and forth vocals, not as much as some other bands maybe, but really focused on Tarja's voice. This is the last album with Tarja before she moved on and did other things. So there's definitely a lot of symphonic metal bands, and I think that's the best tag for Nightwish. I would symphonic metal. But you can't deny that there's a dose of goth mixed into
and
this.
Opera.
They do some opera,
maybe more so with Floor, but yeah.
No, they did some very operatic leaning tracks with Tarja on like the Oceanborn album. Felt very over the top, going in a little bit more the opera direction than the goth direction, perhaps. So I know this style of metal is not a favorite for a ton of folks. There are some bands I like. This is a genre I think is way oversaturated with a lot of very mediocre bands. But some of the early Nightwish albums were quite good, and they borrowed heavily from gothic scene, and maybe you could call it gothic metal. I think you're not out of bounds. It's just that you probably call it gothic tinged symphonic metal or something, and then you have to. We're kind of back to the original comment made by Jack and others in the chat that gothic sometimes becomes more of a descriptor than the actual genre itself.
I got to say, I've done some dives where I was watching a bunch of Floor-fronted Nightwish doing certain songs live, and her voice is astounding. Like, tears to your eyes. Amazing. Her talent is amazing. How good she can sing. It's like take your breath away. Awesome. So good.
Oh yeah, she's an excellent vocalist as well. Yeah, she's technically the third vocalist. They had someone in between Floor and Tarja, whose name slips my mind, that did one or two albums with them, and she wasn't a bad singer either, but she's a little overlooked at this point because she's sandwiched between two fan favorites.
Yeah.
And I would just real quick say I consider Nightwish goth. Like, that's 2000s goth. Now it obviously fits in with symphonic metal and things like that, but that's the era I grew up with. And when we get there, I've got a bunch of bands. Finland was big with goth metal. Like, that was huge in the 2000s and 90s. And if it was in Hot Topic, I counted as goth. So Nightwish was definitely there.
Then Nightwish is so goth.
Goth Topic.
How goth could it be?
When Hot Topic had the like chains and stuff out front.
Now they got a bunch of Japanese animation stuff in there. I was looking for a Joy Division shirt. I'm like, they always have one at Hot Topic. I went in there and no. Misfits and Bad Metallica shirts, yes. No Joy Division. It was crazy.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, not to go off on a tangent, but some folks have started to make the observation that some of those quote unquote classics from that late 70s, early 80s period are starting to slip back in time a little bit, to the point that they don't have the same visibility they did even a decade ago. And I wonder if Joy Division's among those.
Yeah.
Topic for another night. We won't go down that rabbit hole. I'll close it up right now.
Well, I think this is the layup that Justin was giving me here. So this is all from this band.
I've never seen that many Bantango albums in one place.
All this danger shit. It's so hard to keep track of.
Dude, you haven't even scratched the surface of Ted Poley's catalog. If that's all you got, son. You come strong or you don't come at all to the Ted Poley show, son. Don't bring that weak sauce shit here. This is the house that Poley built.
I can't remember what year it was, but I was younger. It was before we got cable. My parents had one of those gigantic satellite dishes because I grew up with 1.5 channels forever. They splurged on this satellite dish, and I was up late one night watching Night Flight. Does anybody remember Night Flight?
We didn't get it, but I know it by reputation.
I saw like early, versions of Guar when they were just a scroungy punk band before their first album even came out. They would like put all these weirdo bands. Well, one night they played some videos by Fields of the Nephilim, and the guy that was talking called them like spaghetti Western goth. And I'm like, okay. And they look the part. They got the dusters, they got the hardware, they got the hats, they got the flower covered. So a lot of the videos they played that night were on this record, Dawn Razor, their debut record. This album it's amazing. There's nothing that sounds like it. There might be other bands that imitated it a bit, but Preacher Man, Power, Blue Water, I mean, they're all videos they showed on that Night Flight. Clips of, and it was just like this post-apocalyptic thing they had going on, and they made the videos, they look like little mini movies with a lot of makeup, and very, very, very cool. And I was completely captivated by it. This radio promo. I might as well just show these off real quick.
Yeah, you got a lot of cool stuff there.
This is a Blue Water single. And Every Dream, Home of Heartache, and Blue Water, some live stuff on it. This is another radio promo. I need to get one that isn't. The people at the radio station would write shit all over the covers, which is so stupid. If I only had a heart.
They're making it more goth.
And oh yeah, WNMC. So I mean, they made him to look like the Tin Man. This is a Moonchild. This was a big single for them, Moonchild. This is the Psychonaut single.
Some of these are tough to get, man.
I've been collecting these for a while. There's some I'm missing, but for Her Light single, this one is huge. This is probably my favorite. This is the Nephilim.
Yeah, that's an amazing album.
This is heavy as hell, dark as hell. Songs like Phobia. What a it's just a up fast track. And Carl McCoy's vocals are so dark and awesome. Celebrate, the song Celebrate. This is Summerland single. This is a little bit newer. This is One More Nightmare. This is when Tony Pettit and Carl got back together and they remade a couple songs, gave him a little bit of a. But I mean, I've got all the CDs too. Early demo shit. Laura. Debut. Nephilim. Oh, this is a live show bootleg. Fallen, which was demos they sent to the record label to show progress, and the record label said, fuck it, we're releasing those. So this Fallen album is basically demos for an album that was supposed to happen. Pissed off the band big time because they're so slow at working. Earth
It was
Inferno.
Jungle Records, right?
Yep.
Screwed him over on that one.
Oh, Beggar's Banquet or Jungle? I can't remember.
No, it was Jungle. They'd been on Beggar's Banquet before that in the early days.
Elysium, if you want a goth, I mean, this is probably their most straight up goth record. This thing is draped with, I mean, you hit play on this and dry ice starts coming out of your speakers. It fills your room with smoke. Yep. And you start smelling cloves and all sorts of other things. This album, there's like 3 instances on this record where it's so depressing I cry every time. It depends on my mental state. It's so sad. So sad. And then Carl broke off and did a little side project called Zune, which is this came out on Metal Blade and Beggar's Banquet, I believe. Metal Blade here in the US.
Yep.
But this is a Beggar's Banquet version of it. But basically it's Fields of the Nephilim more metalized. Straight up. I mean, Carl sounds the same. There's a little bit of an industrial swagger to some of this stuff, some electronic loops and whatnot, but it's still got guitars, heavy. It's more or less metal. And so far, as of yet, the final, the latest Fields of the Nephilim record, Morning Sun, there's a lot of metalisms on this as well, but this album is great. Surprisingly, after all these years, they're still putting out really dreamy, heavy. I mean, there's distortion on here. Carl sounds amazing. The song She, Morning Sun, New Gold Dawn, even the intro, Cover His Face So They May Not See the Light. It's creepy as fuck. So good. I love Fields of the Nephilim. I love it. It's so good. It appeals to all of it checks all the boxes. It's got, the early stuff. It's kind of post-punk, but it's kind of jangly Western style to it. But gothic, it's so weird and cool in it's in its own lane for sure. As they went, I mean, the Nephilim, this album here, I mean, this is another goth rock masterpiece. I mean, the song Celebrate, it's basically him and an acoustic guitar, him singing over an acoustic guitar, super depressing, heavy as hell. No band has really got me going like this band has in this genre. There might be other bands that pick at the style a little bit, but it's just not the same. I'm missing some stuff in the collection, but I've got a pretty good chunk of stuff. I'm pretty happy with it. It's good. Love this band. I love them. They're great. If you are into, check them out. Just check them out. Check out Dawn Razor. Check out the Nephilim. Start there. And then if you like, then continue onward. They get more metal as they go.
I would argue that, I'll just say it, I think Fields of the Nephilim is the best band from this style and era.
I would agree. They shit all over Sisters of Mercy. They shit on them.
And I love Sisters of Mercy, but we talk a lot about how goth is campy and stuff, and it is, and that's the fun of it.
Yeah.
This is not campy. And when you hear goth Western, that sounds like that's going to be goofy as hell. It's fucking cool. It's the really perfect amount of subtlety where it's like they're not just wearing cowboy hats and shit. Like it's evil and it's dark and it's depressing. And this album is just insanely amazing.
It is so. There's some sad fucking songs. Yeah. The last 2 that bleed together. We Must Suffer to Free Our Pain. Can You Help Us Find Our Way? That whole, just the way he's singing over that whole musical passage, just like every time. Yeah, it's so good.
And Zune too. I mean, at his solo record, because it's heavy. It's really heavy. It's a really good blend of stuff, and it's more metal than goth, but it's hard to completely separate that because you still have his voice.
That band broke up after that record. The other guys that were in like the band part of it moved on to start a band called Rubicon, which is okay. It's good. There's some good albums, but it's not as good as Fields of the Nephilim. It's just not the same. Although the early Rubicon stuff, it's pretty okay. And I'm going to show my next trip, another Fields of the Nephilim offshoot. But anyway, I'll get there next time. All right, Justin, you are back.
All right.
Thanks for the layup on that.
Yeah, no problem. I know we've talked about that one before, and I know it's one of my favorites too. So, have to talk about this album. Have to talk about this band. The Cure, obviously, throughout the years has been a staple in goth. Even though a lot of their stuff's, I would say, some of their stuff's not at all goth. It's completely out of the realm. They started off, it was post-punk, but they pretty quickly started getting into what would be that darker sound. 17 Seconds, Faith, Pornography, all of those are staples.
These are my two favorites, Faith and Carnage Visors. I have a 2-on-1 tape.
Nice.
This is probably their most depressing shit, other than Disintegration. I love that record too, but that's out in my truck. So, but this Faith and Carnage Visor is like slit your wrist type shit. It's crazy. Anyway,
for sure. And Faith is, I mean, there's great songs on all those albums.
Oh yeah.
Kind of, I think, undisputed. This would be their gothiest goth album. It's a staple of the 80s.
It's a great record.
It really is. You're really getting that dreamy. Everything just sounds kind of like you're in the rain. Well, I have like 2 songs about the rain on here, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is quintessential. Usually, I mean, again, aesthetic. There's the pure Robert Smith aesthetic right there.
Yep.
But absolute staple. Something too, like when you're pulling up Susie and the Banshees and a lot of these albums. Real quick, I'm just going to branch off because I was watching a video on video games the other day just for fun, and it had it through the years really fast. And there's so many things that we look at from the past, and we're so used to it, and in the scope of now, it doesn't look that crazy or different. And the point of bringing that up is you can see really quick how a video game would be incredible once you see what it's compared up against. And that's kind of the same thing with a lot of this album artwork and stuff from this, because if you look at other things from later 80s, not so much, but especially the 70s and like that Susie album you showed, that was really different from other stuff that was out at that time. There was sort of a really congealed and solidified idea of the aesthetic of what these bands were trying to do. A lot of that comes from the club scene there, because in the UK especially, there's lots of goth clubs that start popping up. But yeah, got sidetracked on that whole thing, but absolute staple of your goth collection. If you don't have it and are wanting to get a goth collection, this one has to be in there. Great front to back. Every single song is fantastic. So it's a good one.
All right. Now, Alan.
Yeah, Cure definitely had to be mentioned. I pulled Head on the Door just because it's one that doesn't always get talked about as much as some of the earlier ones, but is still very good. But yeah, if nothing else, one thing that always impressed me with the Cure is, they made, for my money, 2 of the greatest goth albums, but they're very different from each other. You have Disintegration that you just showed, Justin, which, yes, is this gorgeous album with this huge, full, like you said, dreamy is the perfect word for it, this dreamy sound where you're just kind of walking through, the mists and stuff, but it's so gorgeous. And they also made Pornography, which is one of the bleakest sounding albums.
Yeah.
There is no hope and no light. It's got that really sharp snare sound that just pokes in your brain pan, and just, it's, it's total, very, very dark, kind of, suicide music. And they're completely different styles, and by the same band, and separated by 6 years, 8 years, 7 years, somewhere like something like that. So yeah, impressive band. Don't like all their stuff. They had their missteps along the way, but they did a ton of cool stuff. Anyway, my pick for next. This band I have some stuff by, but they changed over time. I have their early stuff when they were functioning more as a traditional heavy metal band. At a certain point, they always had a little bit of a goth tinge to some of their lyrics, and at a certain point, they just started leaning into that more and more. And it was this point. The band is Storm Witch, and the album was literally called Beauty and the Beast.
That looks like the Chameleon album, or Pink Bubbles Go Ape. It looks like the same damn woman.
It has a little bit of a similarity. I'd never really thought of that, Marty, but you're right. Yeah, she, the lady.
See, we got some Halloween in here tonight. You're welcome. You are welcome, people.
Gothic pumpkins. We could have just shown the Dark Ride.
The Dark Ride, yeah.
That'll work too. But yeah, at this point, Storm Witch started really getting out of traditional metal territory, getting much more accessible, cleaner sound, and just playing up the Gothic stuff even more. Their take on Gothic is more the Edgar Allan Poe kind of Gothic. It's the Victorian era spooky castles and vampire bats and that kind of stuff. They didn't do it in a campy vein, but they did do it in that kind of lighthearted vein. It's not pornography whatsoever. It's you're reading, the classic, Bram Stoker's Dracula, not the Anne Rice, vampires or, any other version. You're very much just sticking to the classics, which is what they did. They did it fairly well. They lost a lot of their fans along the way, though, because just musically it strayed a little too bit far outside of traditional metal territory. They've hung around, they've come back and forth, they've done a lot of albums. They still kind of, they've gotten a little more metallic again over the years, but they still have that, very, strong Gothic influence in a lot of the songwriting. When you look at the lyrics and stuff, it's just a who's who of, classic Victorian era, Gothic and Gothic horror type motifs. So yeah, I figured Stormwitch would be a good example and show how the Gothic influence even bleeds over into traditional metal songs, and bands can pick that aesthetic up and run with it and make it their own too. So yeah, always be careful when buying Stormwitch material. The first 2 or 3 albums are, good heavy German stuff. You get into these later ones and you may have the buyer's remorse.
Yeah, Steve Wolfram, who's usually in the chat, he sent me one of those, and it's really bad. It's like glam metal. It's not even good glam. It's bad.
Yeah, they can get kind of rough. Yeah.
Don't want to say, hey, thanks for sending me this crappy CD, bro. But no,
nah, it's all cool. Yeah, I haven't seen Steve in the chat in a few weeks. So, Steve, if you're watching after the fact, cheers.
Hope you're doing well, man. Hope you're doing well. Yep. All right. I'm going to continue on with the Fields of the Nephilim adjacent. This band formed out of Fields of the Nephilim was supposed to reform. And Tony, the bass player, and Carl got together, did some stuff. It didn't pan out. So Tony and what's his name? The old drummer from Fields, Simon Pippin. Hold on, folks. I want to get this right. Simon Rippin. And also they employed Peter Bob White on vocals, and basically they started this band, NFD. Noise for Destruction is what it's supposed to stand for. This basically sounds like a Fields of the Nephilim tribute band. The singer Bob, his voice sounds just like Carl McCoy. Same throaty, low, gravelly, desperate style of vocals. There might be a little bit more of a heavier edge to some of this stuff, but these NFD albums, I mean, you got the cowboy hats, the backlit, it's very much. And Tony's bass, he's a very proggy bass player. So, I mean, a lot of that shines through on this stuff. Deadpool Rising. This is No Love Lost, Live and Unleashed. Deeper Visions. And, oh my God, Reformations. Basically, I'm missing 1 or 2 of their albums. But this is really great. Fields of the Nephilim worship. 2 guys are that were in Fields. But the singer... It's kind of gross when you first listen to it, like, oh, it sounds just like Fields of the Nephilim. But then you start listening to it and you're like, oh, it sounds just like Fields of the Nephilim. Cool. So it's a weird shift there of paradigm, but check these guys out. Very much Gothic, heavy, catchy, dark, awesome, good stuff. So that's it for my Fields of the Nephilim. Yeah, sorry, No Love Lost, no Carcass cover.
I had not heard of them. I got to check that out.
Check out NFD.
Yeah, they are.
Pull them up. They're good.
If you just want something else that's really close to the Fields, they do it nicely.
Yep. I'm all about it. All about it.
All right, Justin.
So venturing off a little bit from the music and going more into the media, but you have to talk about this because it was such a massive staple for goth kids in the 90s. And that is the soundtrack to this movie. Now, not the soundtrack itself. The soundtrack is not goth at all.
Does that have a 9 Inch Nails version of Dead Souls on it?
It does, actually. You're
that
right.
Fucking rules, by the way.
It's so good. And that is gothy. And it does also have there's another one on here. Burn by The Cure, which is a B-side, and also a really solid song. But yeah, the Dead Souls cover by 9 Inch Nails was insanely awesome. And that scene is fucking cool when he's running on the tops as he just got his powers and all that stuff. I'm sure everybody here knows this movie. But it just really solidified like the 90s goth vibes. Based on a comic book that was pretty big in the 80s, coming from this 80s era of goth culture. This stemmed from it. Of course, got to have the original VHS of it as well. Sequel sucked ass. Third one actually isn't too bad. So check out the Crow Salvation. But this just goes back into that thing. You got a lot of, other than Dead Souls, a lot of grunge that was coming out of the era that's on this album. But the 90s goth is seeping its way into other things, and other things are seeping into goth. It's a transitional era, but also really solidifies, I think, what we would consider goth metal now.
Thanks, Glenn. Maybe we need to do a shirt that says "I'm a sex condor." Maybe we should.
Oh.
Thank you, Glenn. You're too kind.
Appreciate that.
So that was just honorable mention. There's not really a lot to talk about it because, again, musically, other than the Dead Souls cover, there's not a lot of goth to it. But that movie visually is as
great
goth as you can get.
Oh, completely agree.
And you're right. Just, I mean, it was the blueprint for every kid who wanted to be goth for a solid decade afterwards.
That Halloween had to suck because everybody went as the Crow.
Yeah.
All right, Alan.
And the original comic too, as I'm sure most folks know, a lot of Joy Division lyrics you spliced in on different pages. The original comic, of course, is much darker than the movie was, and there's the guy who had written it, I forget his name, but had lots of just different poetry and song lyrics and snippets of things spliced in, and there's multiple things from Joy Division in it.
Joy Division were an amazing band, by the way, and after Ian died, the first oh my God, New Order album that came out, Movement. It was a lot of Joy Division songs that were supposed to be for the next show. It is depressing as hell. It's a great record. Check out New Order's Movement. It's an amazing record. It was supposed to be heavy and on vocals, but killer. Anyway, sorry, Alan, didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh no, it's all good. Yeah, I will say one thing in defense of The Crow 2. There's at least one or two things that make that movie somewhat worthwhile. Iggy Pop is in that movie and does a very good job playing one of the real just disgusting low life members of the villain gang in it. Yes, the movie has a lot of issues outside of that, but I always liked his portrayal in that particular movie. He really does just play the scumbag to a T. Imagine that.
Now, he was supposed to be Fun Boy in the first one. They tried to get him to do it, but he was like, this is some B movie. I don't give a shit. And it got huge. So then when the second one was coming out, he's like, yep, I'm on board. I'll do it.
Oh, I did not know that. He would have been perfect as Fun Boy.
It would have been absolutely perfect.
Because when seeing it, I'm just like, wow, he really went for the look of the guy from the comic book that should have been in the first movie. Yeah. So yeah, but no, I did not know he was actually kind of that he passed on the role. That's cool.
Oh.
All right, let's see. Next, time to go for go a little deeper here for a band that was sort of gothic metal and then became gothic rock, I think. The band is called Avernus.
Oh, Chicago-based band?
Yep. Chicago band from the kind of like mid-90s. They never really broke big.
They had a huge demo back in the day called Sadness. It blew up the underground, millions of flyers. They were, it's like Internal Bleeding. Every package I got either had an Internal Bleedings flyer in it or an Avernus flyer in it. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, they did a bunch of demos starting around, and let me make sure here. Yeah, starting like 93, 94. They did a bunch of demos, and most of them were pretty good. The earliest stuff, and it's like, oh, it's got a funny title. Which one is it? Like A Delicate Tracery of Red. Draws really heavily off of the Peaceville 3, who I'm sure we're going to talk about here sooner or later.
And my toilet bowl yesterday. Anyway. Sorry,
that's not goth, Marty. That's something different altogether.
That's more thrash.
Yeah, I need a Cologuard box stat. Get one up in here. I got to shit in a box. Anyway.
That sounds like a you problem, not an us problem.
Can I get the goth version of the color guard box, please? Anyway,
just make sure you seal it up with black tape.
We'll seal it up with sackcloth. Anyway,
there you go. But yeah, so with Avernus, the first demo, maybe a couple more after that, yeah, they were very much going for like, the very deep, growly death doom. I mean, what we would think of now as, death doom style, very influenced by like As the Flower Withers and early Anathema and stuff.
Yep.
But they also pretty rapidly drifted further and further away from the heavy vocals and got into cleaner vocals. And at the same time, the music got a little softer, got a little less metallic, moved into more of kind of gothic rock territory. It wasn't bad, but there was a pretty quick shift over the next series of demos. So by the time they got their first album out, actually probably their only album, yeah, they did one full-length album called Of the Fallen in 1997. This is not a compilation from later on that's got some of the demos and various stuff on it. But yeah, by the time they did their album, they were very much, they had a female vocalist, very pretty. The music was more simplified. It would fall more in line with just, gothic rock style. But yeah, they had definitely started out in, much heavier territory on the demos. I see like Mark and some folks mentioned that, yeah, they have the demos from back in the day. And like you said, Marty, the demos were a big deal. I had them from tape trading. I had several of them. I think there was one I never managed to track down. But the album, by that time, it was a completely different sound they went for, but still very gothic. The album, again, has, people, statues, the kind of the sad statue pose and everything, just like you'd expect it to. It's not a bad listen. They never really broke through after that, though. So the initial hype died down and things just fizzled out. But yeah, they were not one I get to mention very often. Perfect for this particular topic, I thought.
True.
Awesome.
All right, Marty, pass it over to you, sir.
All right. Well, we talked about Sisters of Mercy earlier. So let's talk about Sisters of Mercy by way of Sweden. Sweden being Dan Swano from Edge of Sanity. He had a project started off. First album is called Nightingale. Well, the project's called Nightingale. The Breathing Shadow is the name of the album. This is Dan basically sharing his love of Sisters of Mercy through the first album of this. As this band went on, he got his brothers involved and it ended up being kind of a prog band. This here is a drum machine, Sisters of Mercy. If you listen to the song Sacrificed on the Spectral Sorrows, that's kind of a precursor to what this album ended up being. Very good. Dan's voice, his clean singing voice, is very well suited for this record. He really does nail it perfectly. In fact, this, like I said, this is the only Nightingale I've owned. I've owned other albums of theirs, and I just couldn't get into the proggy stuff. I got rid of them. This one stays. It's very well written. Goth drum machine, Sisters of Mercy, with Dan Swano's wonderful crooning voice. But yep, this is the first one I pulled when this topic came up. I'm like, okay, yeah, this one is this is definitely a keeper. If you haven't heard this one, Justin, I think you would like it. Go check your Goodwill tomorrow. It's probably there. 25 cents.
I haven't actually. You guys are pulling some good stuff that I've not seen before, so I will check that out too.
Yep. Dan Swano, Edge of Sanity fame, Bloodbath, good shit.
Nice.
All right, Justin, you're back.
So another one I'm going to talk about for a minute, but I did do a deep dive. Of course, we have to talk about this band. I did a deep dive on it with Jeff at Gas Masks and Hand Grenades, so go check that out too. But you can't talk about 90s goth without talking about Typo Negative.
Yeah, I knew. That's why I'm pulling it, because I knew you'd have it. That album on top in particular. It's like the Barry White album for metalheads.
This one?
No. October Rust.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
that
yeah.
is yeah.
So technically their first goth album for sure. So talk about campy. Everybody here knows this already, but in case there's someone who doesn't, Christian woman, just sultry, sexy goth as much as you can get. Complete, total control over that imagery, really pushing that through. Black Number One, which is directly a dig at the goth culture of the 90s and 80s.
And so everybody misinterpreted it and loved it and just embraced it as more goth.
It was meant to be a dig at Peter Steele's ex-girlfriend, and then it turned out to be like the defining song of the culture that everybody embraced.
That's like the ultimate victory. He won, right?
Yeah, he won. And then of course followed up, which this album was not well received because people were expecting more of this. And to quote Peter Steele, he wanted to write an album that would get him laid. And so that album is it's kind of like Susie's and the Banshees Tinderbox. It's got it's got an atmosphere about it. It's undeniable. Exactly the fifth member of the band. Yeah, right. And they were trying to sound goth. Like this was, we have a definition of what this sounds like to us. We're going to make it. Lots of references to, of course, some werewolf lore, which I won't go into great detail what the representation is on here.
If you read our friend Jeff Wagner's book on Souls at Zero on Peter Steele, he talked about that he was going to a lot of goth clubs and trying to get women and hanging out and enjoying stuff by Sisters of Mercy and all that other stuff, and it definitely rubbed off on that record.
For sure. And when I go to New York, I'm actually going to go to Duff's Bar, which is still there, which is
cool.
Peter Steele hung out. But
yeah.
Got to talk about these albums when we talk about 90s goth.
Awesome. Yeah, good poll. So. Had to happen. I knew you'd have that one covered. Okay, right. Ellen.
Let's see here. I'm gonna do this one next. Yeah. Another band that jumped through some different styles. This one kind of moved more in a goth direction, at least for a little while. But they started out actually more as I think they're better known to a lot of folks for their earlier death metal stuff. Talking about Cemetery. They, of course, Evil Shade of Grey, and even the album after that. Great death metal albums, but by this album they had really kind of stripped down their sound and moved in to a more accessible metal style, but it's got a lot of the kind of characteristics we've been talking about all night. It's got more that gloomy atmosphere, the vocals and stuff, more of this kind of autumn coming fire type song titles and lyrics and things, and frankly I like it. I thought they were incredibly good at this style around this album in particular, which is Black Vanity. The one that came after it, Sundown, was very similar
to
this one.
Go ahead and talk. I'll just show them off.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, they had a very good run of albums in this style. Now they eventually started drifting in a little more electronic vibe, by that one, but it was still done very well. Even there, they were incorporating some New Dawn and had they split this band up at one point, formed a different similar project.
Right here, Sundown.
Yep, Sundown was taken from the name of an earlier Cemetery album. But through it all, the albums were very, very good. And this is another one. This one's it's a little hard to describe this era of the band. Early on, yes, they just had the classic, creepy European, death metal vibes all over it. But I think this one, you definitely can apply that kind of gothic title to it. This is a fantastic album, very underrated. No one ever talks about this one. This sat in the used bin at my local store for like 4 years before someone finally coughed up $5 for it. I felt so bad.
That's a weird album. It's weird.
I felt so. I was like, someone should buy that album. If I knew anybody that needed it or would appreciate it, I'd buy it and send it to them. But I couldn't think of anybody that didn't already have it. But yeah, mid-period Cemetery. Really, really good stuff. Other bands were kind of doing the same thing. I'm sure we'll talk about a couple of them later tonight. Some other bands were maybe a little more successful at making the switch into this kind of more gothic rock metal sound. But those bands also started out with a bigger audience than Cemetery. Never quite got over the top as being a big name in metal circles, but they were very talented, and I like a lot of their stuff.
Well, in that album too, when did that come out? Roughly?
Good question. Probably about 94, 95.
Okay. Yeah, that makes total sense because that was about the era where gothic metal and gothic rock starts doing a lot of the digital collage album covers. like such. Like
that album
all
rules,
of them.
by the way.
Oh,
that
yeah,
rules.
That's side by side with Typo Negative. This is the other era goth metal from that time.
Yep.
All right. Well, I'm going to go into the 2000s here and more metal. I'm going to get into the metal side of it. And it's kind of funny because you look at this album cover and there's a whole nother tirade about this. Okay, look at this album cover and tell me what record label this came out on.
I don't know.
Napalm Records.
Napalm Records. Of course.
There was the 2000s where every like Mactatus record had a goth chick on the cover with no shirt on, and it was a thing. But this is
Mactatus actually has a new album coming out. I had no idea they were still around.
That's actually a reissue.
Is it?
You're talking about the promo we got? That's actually a reissue.
Is it a reissue?
Early albums, yeah.
Yeah, I saw them just like, wow, there's a name I haven't thought of in at least 10 years.
The earlier stuff is okay, but they got real gothic-y, and they probably could have made it onto this thing, but this band here, this Sirenia, this is their debut album at 6s and 7s. I have not been able to let this one go over the years. In fact, I put it on again today to remind myself why I keep it, and if it was what I thought it was, and it still rules. And one thing that reminds you about Digipacks, they suck. Look at this piece of shit. Look at this. It's disassembling in front of your eyes because the glue, everything about this. Anyway, this is a Norwegian band. Very much in the gothic metal vibe. It is, the singer has got on this album, the guy does a lot of singing on it. He's got deeper growls and more of a black metal type of vocals. There's also a clean pitch lady singer on here too, but there's a lot of lavish keyboard synthesizer passages. The reason I've kept this record over the years is because it is very well done. It's got all the cheese of the goth influence on here, but the songs are so catchy and well done. I tried to keep up with this band over the years, and at one point the lady took over all the vocals, and I just do not like. I like the contrast between the Beauty and the Beast type of vocal style. You got the type shit. When they switched over to all lady singing, it just isn't as good. Here, this is a good record. Had to make the list. I'm probably gonna. I skimmed it. I'm gonna probably spin it again because it is quite good. Really super cheesy. So be prepared. Anyway, I'm checking out Anyway, check this out. Sirenia, their first one at 6s and 7s. Good record. Good heavy gothic metal record. And don't get the Digipack because that's what you get. Justin.
All right, so we are in my era of goth. This is before I was into metal, when I was in junior high and high school, which would be 2000 was junior high, 2002 when I got into high school. This is my time. So let's talk about this one first. 69 Eyes. Just running with it. Running with the goth vibes as hard as you can. I have Blessed Be on the way. It just got re-released too. So this band started off, actually their first 89 technically, and they were trying to do the Motley Crue thing, doing glam metal and stuff like that. So they had a couple albums in there with one song called Wrap Your Troubles in Dreams, which it's strange because it's a goth song on a very not goth album, and it's album before this or a couple before it. Wasting to Dawn is considered their first goth album. Finnish also. Most of the bands in this era that I'm going to talk about are from Finland because it was just like a boom of gothic metal from there. So this is kind of the first one. And I can't remember, Blessed Be comes out next, but Blessed Be and Paris Kills are extremely similar. And these guys are running with it. One of their songs is called Brandon Lee, who was the main actor of The Crow in the movie The Crow. They have a song called Gothic Girl, which is, I have to imagine, is a play on Black Number One from Typo Negative because it's about gothic girls. It's cheese. It's totally fun. It is meant to be that. But this is pure 2000s goth rock, goth metal. And if you like some glam stuff too, the earlier stuff's fun. And these guys, still putting out records like every 2 or 3 years. They've constantly been putting out stuff. But it really was these 3 albums. Blessed Be was, or Wasting the Dawn was 99. Blessed Be was 2000. Paris Kills 2002. So within a very short period, they put out 3 of the purest 2000s goth metal albums. Then they come out with Devils and Angels and some other albums. And that's that weird era where it's solidly 2000s. And those albums sound and look to me kind of like a reality TV show. Pink started coming in really big, like the color pink and like gothic stuff. Again, Hot Topic was a big influence at this time. And they kind of ran with it. But if you're not familiar with 69 Eyes, you're getting some Sisters of Mercy influence on here too. They credit Hanoi Rocks as what got them started.
Oh,
but then they really start moving into the heavier bass synths and things like that feel kind of Sisters of Mercy, kind of blend those two. So, yeah, 69 Eyes.
I gotta say, there's a lot of people mentioning Tristania in the chat, and I put on a on Spotify. I pulled up a gothic metal playlist, and there was a Tristania song on there, and it was quite good. It sounded like true goth metal. It sounded like a true gothic metal collaboration. It was quite a good song. I'm like, I'm gonna have to check this band out a little bit more. It was interesting.
Do you remember which? Because their first album was
I don't know,
pretty heavy metal, and then they kind of move into the more romantic goth later on.
Really?
Tristania is definitely a big one.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't look. I was driving. So, all right, Alan.
I'm still mulling over the Hanoi Rocks connection with 69 Eyes.
It's a glam thing.
I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
The sound wise, no, but they say
there's a Hanoi Rocks joke buried right there for anybody that actually knows Hanoi Rocks.
Yeah, you're going, what? I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't get it's one of a Hanoi Rock is an old Hanoi Rocks song.
Oh, and cheers to the people that did guess Napalm Records in the chat when I asked what label. There was a couple right answers. John and Mark got it right. There was another person too. Human Falafel. Yeah. There was like every single record that came out on Napalm had a girl either wearing a top or not on it. It was amazing. Anyway,
now they all have laser shooting dinosaurs on the cover. So
perfect.
Kind of a lateral move.
Got to take the good with the bad, Alan. You got to take the good with the bad. All right.
All right. Lots of good ones we haven't talked about yet. So
I can't believe Simon thinks Tristania's first EP is good. Are you sick? Did you catch a bug down there? Did something that could kill you in your garden bite you? Anyway, do we need to call 911? Anyway, go ahead.
Just remember, you got to dial 119 because it's backwards.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then stand by your toilet. And anyway,
you're really fixated on the toilet tonight, Marty.
Yeah, I am. That's the thing. Happens when you get older.
Yeah, we've got a lot of big name ones we haven't talked about yet, so I'm just going to grab one of them that some people will like and some won't. But and it came up briefly earlier, but Cradle of Filth definitely should be part of the conversation. Musically, most people always associate them with black metal, but they do incorporate bits and pieces of lots of stuff in their sound. Visually though and lyrically, it's drenched in goth. All the My Bloody Bride kind of imagery. Castle, check. Mysterious Woman, check. Blurry picture of forbidden love, check. On and on it goes. I get why people aren't into them. I got tired of Cradle pretty quickly too. The first few albums I enjoyed. They're not something I go back to a ton. This was always my favorite. But even the one after this, the Countess Bathory story one, is still pretty good.
Vampire? No, is it?
No, Vampire came a bit. Vampire is like the EP-ish thing that came out before this.
I can see the lady sitting in the blood.
Cruelty and the Beast.
Yeah, Cruelty and the Beast.
Yeah. But say whatever you will about Donnie Filth and his ego and the music over the years. He always was, an incredibly good lyric writer. If you don't like the music, you could at least sit down and read through the lyrics. They were always kind of fun. He had that kind of Martin Walkyier type of wit and wordplay. about him. And I know a lot of people had a lot of issues with him, not defending any of that, but yeah, the guy could write, some, very, well-crafted lyrics. And, he took this ball and he ran with it and obviously made it into a very successful career. But this is, again, the Gothic aesthetic is part of it, but would you call it Gothic metal? Would you just call it black metal? Is it just Gothic metal once again, kind of bleeding into yet another style and, bringing the aesthetics with it? But is there anything in the musical construction that makes it Gothic? I don't know.
You take a little bit of black metal, you take a little bit of Anne Rice, you take some Martin Walkyier, and you have Cradle of Filth.
Yeah, but again, the musical component to that was black metal.
Yeah.
But I don't need to talk about them a lot. Folks know the band. Yeah, some folks love them. A lot of folks hate them. I don't mind some of the early stuff. I just lost interest over time. I don't need to hear every Cradle of Filth album. A handful of them is good enough for me.
Really, the only one I would like to own is The Principle of Evil Made Flesh, and I only have that as a tape trade. I've never owned it. I owned a bunch of them afterwards, and I got rid of them all. I found myself never really needing to listen to them.
Same here, yeah. I don't know if I ever had Principle. I had the Vampire collection at one point, but traded it to somebody for something, and never really missed it, to be honest.
I always really wanted to like them because, again, they kind of got big in the 2000s, and I was getting into that, and I just got bored. I didn't want to. It shouldn't. I respect what it is, and I respect what it became and everything, but I just didn't click with me.
Nope, and that's okay.
All right. Okay. I've talked about this album so many times on this channel. It's so stupid, but it's true. This album rules.
Tanner's Hypertrace is not Gothic. We talked about this in the dugout. You had to put that one back on the shelf, man.
Well, hold on a second. Let me grab this other one then.
Okay. There you go.
I love Fields of the Nephilim, and when Sentence decided to embrace that vibe, Tonelli Jarva started singing aggressive and dark like Carl McCoy somewhat. This album rules. It just rules. It's cheesy. Dance on the Graves, Lil Sizta. I mean, all the stupid spellings, and this album rules. I love it. This is a fall record for me. I don't know. The fall is when I spin this one the most, but it's catchy. They ended up, after Jarva left, to form the Black League, which is, he basically took this style and took it to his other band, the Black League. They put out a couple things and that was it. But the band got another singer and they got really commercial, super gothy after this album.
Yeah,
I know. I can't help it, but this album rules. Check it out for sure. Fields of the Nephilim mixed with North from Here, I guess you could say. It's good.
Yeah, this was one of the bands I was, kind of alluding to earlier with the Cemetery discussion, that Sentence also moved, out of that, more traditional, Finnish death metal vibe into this more, goth rock metal vibe. It's just that Sentence ended up selling, I don't know, millions of records, and Cemetery sold thousands.
All right, Justin.
But I like the Cemetery ones a lot better. I do not care for Sentence's later goth rock sad sack face.
So you don't like Amok? Amok is not.
No. Amok is excellent. It's the album after that, after Jarva's left, where I felt like they really just embraced the let's just be simple and kind of downer sounding. I'm just like, pass. Nope, done. Moving on.
There was a couple albums I didn't mind. Like Down was pretty good. I think that was the name of it. The gold cover.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just so. It was written for. Well, I'm not going to say that because that's a lame thing to say. But we'll just say that they were pointing their ship towards a different demographic.
Very much so.
Yep.
They were making an album so they could get laid.
That's right. Exactly.
Or something like that.
Yep.
Sorry, Justin.
If you don't make love to me, I'm going to kill myself. Type of album.
The Razor Blade.
Yeah, you don't want me to do this, do you? No. Yeah.
That just made many more albums like that. I might have killed myself because I really have no use for that.
They did eventually. They finally did kill themselves, thankfully. But
they finally hung it up, and fair enough. They were successful. I'm not going to hold it against them. It's not the era of the band I like.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna jump over a few things to bounce off that. This will make sense in a moment. So I'm going to talk about another 2000s Finnish rock band, Charon. Never got as big as like him or the 69 Eyes, but really solid stuff. The lead singer, Juha, I think. I'm really bad with my Scandinavian names. Just really good vocals. It's pretty straightforward. You had mentioned the term goth and roll earlier, and that is actually a term that's thrown around for this kind of stuff where it's like rock and roll and goth. It's just that perfect blend. Really solid stuff though. Same thing, Lady. It's a digital, cover, all that, but really solid band. I bring this up because he, the lead singer of this band, sang on this record, Poison Black, which
Yuck. Oh, that's yucky.
It's not good. I like this one because he's singing on it and I like his voice. And of course the dude from Sentenced went on to continue on with this band, and I have not liked much of anything from Poison Black, but it's worth mentioning because it is in there and it was a weird kind of super group in the Finnish goth bands. But yeah, this album cover too fits the cheesiness of
it. Could have been on Napalm Records, but that's Nuclear Blast, isn't it?
I think it was originally, yeah. Because Nuclear Blast did most of this stuff. No,
most of us don't
Spine
like
Farm.
Speaking of that one. Oh, that's on Spine Farm, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Rick. Most people don't like Speaking of that, uttering that name, Underama, around here. Anyway.
So just a nod at those real quick. They're not huge ones within it, but Charon is worth checking out. This one's a great one. It's nothing over the top spectacular about him, but it's just pretty solid stuff. So this one in particular is really good.
Huh, cool.
All right.
Alan.
All right. What did I do last time? I did Cradle. Let's do one more of the big ones because we've touched on some other bands that followed this trajectory with Sentenced in the Cemetery. Catatonia did exactly the same thing. Started out more in the death metal vibes, death doom, and over the course of just a couple of albums, went for a more straightforward kind of simplified sound that had more of a gothic overtone towards it. Lots of the sadness, the despondency, the loneliness, the bleakness. It really comes through on this album, Discouraged Ones. They obviously did a lot of albums after this where they went even further into this territory with, Tonight's Decision, Last Fair Deal Gone Down, and such. Every album I got a little less interested, just to be honest. I know a lot of folks dig those albums, and that's great. They're still going strong. They had a new album come out earlier this year. It's gotten very good reviews. I have not heard it yet. For me, it just kind of felt like they've started making more or less the same album over and over. But up through this point, I thought the band was great. This is the one that I want to hear if I'm looking for that style of Catatonia. This one still has a more stark bleakness to it than the ones that came after. The ones that came after started to lose that tone of lyrically it's still sad, and they're still getting kind of that sad mournful thing, but this one just has a little bit more of an edge to it, and it made all the difference to me. Always liked this one quite a bit, and was always everyone that came after it, and nothing ever quite measured up to Discouraged Ones in my view. And again, is it a gothic album and music style? Not per se, but it draws again. You've got the angelic imagery, the lonely, abandoned, dusty, house atmosphere. Going back to the place where we once dwelled, and none are still there. It
so much tragedy within these four walls.
Exactly. Is that a line from the album?
No, I'm just I'm feeling.
It will be
from
now.
my heart.
Are you sure? It sounds damn familiar.
It could. That could have been. Yeah.
I don't know if you're galaxy braining me or not.
That's not something I do often, so probably not.
Well, I want to pass it over to you, and I want to go through the lyric sheet here because that's like triggering something in the back of my mind that I think it's maybe in here somewhere. I think we may have a copyright violation there. So.
Now, pulling that's cool. I just want to show this one too. This is where I stopped giving a shit about Catatonia. Once they started trying to write the same Cure album over and over and over again, they put out like 4 albums in a row that sound like this, and you could tell, okay, we like the Cure. The last one I care about with Catatonia is Last Fair Deal Gone Down. There's a lot of really catchy songs on that record. My Nurse, I think, Like a Ghost at Night, she comes around all dressed in white, talking to me. I mean, great album. And then they started down this road, which I liked it, but then they kept going and going and going, and they started to sound the same for me. So, yeah.
See, I was really late on Catatonia. Fall of Hearts is my first album by them. And I really love it because it was the first thing I heard. And then it was much later on. I was like, oh, they were like a black metal band back in the 90s. Holy shit.
Kids these days, I swear.
I know, right?
All right. Well, God, I hate to call this band gothic. I just do. It's lame, but the internet told me that they're considered a gothic band, which I don't get it. But I'm going to show it anyway because it's awesome. As soon as Annika joined the Gathering, the Gathering stopped being kind of a boring death doom band and became something way better. This she's a little pitchy on this record. This is her first album. I love this record, man. She has kind of a punk rock way of really belting it out. I dig it, but she's very melodious. Very sweet in her performance and her sound. And the albums that followed this, Nighttime Birds is amazing. How to Measure a Planet. I love it. I love her era of this band a lot. I have a hard time calling this gothic, but I wanted to pull it just to talk about it for one quick second. This album still has a metal feel to it, but it's very much Century Media in the mid 90s. This band summed up Century Media in the night, and as did Sentenced earlier. I showed them earlier. What they became after Jarva left is very much Century Media in the 90s. They've got a lot of high caliber bands that were tinkering with the goth style. God, like I said, I struggle calling this goth. I don't know why I pulled it other than I looked at it and like, oh yeah, this is cool. But
yeah, no, I think it's fair. Early Gathering had a little, there was a period there where they had that, a more of a goth sound, but you're right. They moved on.
Yeah, they moved on. They got a little bit more alternative, college rocky as they went, like on that Always album and so forth and so on. But this is great. There's a lot of heavy stuff on it still with her sweet voice over the top of it. It's just a nice juxtaposition. Nighttime Birds has got a lot of depressing vibes on it. I love that record. And How to Measure a Planet. There's a song about Mozart. I believe it's Mozart or one of the composers. Another one of those songs that brings me tears. It's great, well written, passionate. These guys are great. And me and Alan saw her.
Yep.
At Milwaukee Metal Fest back in the day. Were you in that room too?
Yep. I was. Yep.
They were
I
awesome.
think I missed the start of their set, but I got there by like the middle of it.
It wasn't long enough. They were so good. So good.
Yep. I agreed. Before we jump to Justin, I have to break in because I was not kidding.
I was talking from my heart, and now you're going to call me out.
I was not kidding. Going through the lyric sheet here, while you talked about the Gathering, the song Relentless, has the lines, I don't know where I live, dirty, splintered palace walls.
That wasn't even close to what I said.
It's pretty close to what you said.
That isn't what I said.
That's pretty close to what you said.
Okay.
Fantastic. I dug the magnifying glass too.
Does that have Saw You Drown on it? Does that album have Saw? Because that's a great song.
Yes, it does. And yes, it's a great song.
That's a great song.
Yep.
All right.
It's Justin's turn.
All right.
I have to use a little boys' room while you guys are talking about it. Be right back.
Go for it. I have to talk about this for 2000s goth. It's just really brought a lot of attention to the Finnish goth scene too, though him was not nearly as metal as a lot of other stuff that was coming out of Finland at the time. Their first album, Greatest Love Songs, Volume 666, that's my favorite one. It's a lot more doomy And they were, I mean, God, I think they were like 17 when they were writing that album. A lot of Black Sabbath worship on that. But then, is this their second? Yeah, this is their second album. They just straight into that hardcore romantic sort of goth vibe of the 2000s. And this is always what I think of when I say this is when goth went pink. And again, Hot Topic had him shit everywhere. And this is the quintessential 2000s vibe of what it all became. Real quick on this one, this again for the United States, band from Finland getting so big part of that. If anybody knows him, you already know all about this, but Bam Margera, the skateboarder and jackass guy, is the one who kind of brought him over, directed a lot of their videos after they sort of started getting popular in the US. And that really shot them up, which in turn, I loved this band. I still do. It was just like when I was a kid in the Midwest where there was just nothing. I was like, this is the coolest shit I've ever seen. I want to be Ville Valo so bad. I just didn't have the heroin chic look quite enough to be able to pull it off. But they have lots of albums. The first 4 are really considered their goth albums. Venus Doom, which comes after Love Metal, they moved over to the US and started getting their albums produced after the album Love Metal, which was, the hell was the name of it? The one with the skyscraper on the front. And it starts the production changes because it's getting produced in California here in the US. So they lost a lot of that gothic sound at that time. And then it gets kind of weird after that. And he actually just put out a new album and I went and saw him live and he still sounds great. Still killed it. Yeah. What? Is it the nipples?
I have a pair of pants that fits like that too.
You have to talk about him if you're going to talk about goth rock and goth metal. Him is huge. So, but yeah, I had to put that in there. I grew up with this. This was way before I knew metal and shit. I loved this band very, very much. But if you're saying, oh, hell no to this, you just wait until my next one. You just wait.
All right. Alan.
Well, let's see. Folks are talking about this one in the chat, and it's been here in the stack. So yeah, let's bring up another one of the big ones. Tiamat. Yeah, another band that kind of started out in very different territory with black and this stuff, and it pretty rapidly graduated more and more into different territory. This is another one that you can definitely say, it has a lot of kind of a gothic feel to it, but I don't know if I would call it gothic metal per se. It's got psychedelic elements. It's, there's often, Pink Floyd comparisons made, which I get where people make that statement. I don't know. It always maybe feels like a little too easy or lazy a comparison. I always feel like there's got to be a better reference point than calling them Pink Floyd-like. But that's just me. Anyway, yeah, Wild Honey is definitely the album that really brought them to a lot of people's attention, where they really dove into this. Even before that, though, like on Clouds, they were leaning into that style some already. I just pulled a deeper kind of slumber because it's the follow-up to Wild Honey. Didn't do as well upon release. Some people felt, seemed to have a little bit of a negative reaction to it. I think it's actually a really solid album. Wild Honey's probably better. I'm not claiming this is going to outrank it, but yeah, still a good album that still has, those weird, moody atmospheres. It still has, the psychedelics. This is definitely still the phase where Thomas is, very, very much chasing the horse through all these dreams and visions and stuff, shall we say. But yeah, they, another example of just, there's a lot of gothic aesthetics that kind of are here, but it's not the main aesthetic. It's not the only aesthetic. They blended a lot of different stuff around this period and kind of injected it straight into their music.
All right.
What you got next, Marty?
I'm just going to go with this one because I know the other one I was going to pull, Justin would want to talk about as well. So I'm going to go with this one. We just talked about this band here a while ago with Tom from Sin Arcadia Productions. My Dying Bride. The Angel in the Dark River is where they let go of all of their metal.
Would you say they turned loose the
the shit,
Metal?
the crap.
The metal?
Yeah, no, yeah, they turned loose the metal for sure. I hate this record. I just do. But you know, you can't really talk about gothic metal and not talk about this record.
Mm-hmm.
It's boring. Aaron's whiny vocals are grating. There's so many bands that did it much better than this band did at this point in their career. My Dying Bride really did get comfortable with this sound as they went, and they did so by incorporating more metal back into it. Like Alan showed Turn Loose the Swans. That's a pretty good cross section of both styles.
Mm-hmm.
Which after this record, it, you know, Turn Loose the Swans was kind of the model for the rest of their career, which it's great. It's good. Yeah. Turn Loose the Yawns. I hated this record when it came out, and it just doesn't click. The first song, The Cry of Mankind, is the best one on the album. It's 12 minutes long, and that doesn't say a lot for me, but yep. Whiny, yawny. It's just, people love this record, and more power to you. I can't sit with it. I can't.
That's okay. Yeah, that's me though. I do like that album a lot, and it definitely plays on all those gothic. Aaron has it's just the checklist: violin, check. Girlfriend with terminal disease, check. Lots of gothic literature and poetry, check. White poofy shirt, check. He's got it all there, and something that's kind of funny and plays into
white poofy shirt.
True. But yeah, every picture is the flouncy looking shirt. But and it also plays. It plays into a point you and me and Justin have made all night. Like you said, we did the deep dive with Tom on My Dying Bride, which was really fun. Talked about them for hours that night. I don't think a single time we referred to them as gothic metal. Yet, there's usually thought of as doom metal, and the first album and some of those early EPs are kind of death doom. But here they certainly fit with this topic of gothic metal. But through an entire multi-hour deep dive, I don't think the phrase gothic metal ever got uttered.
It's right. We didn't.
Not that I recall. Now maybe it made it there into like hour 3, and I just am drawing a blank on it. But it just kind of goes back to, gothic, is very, it's kind of a weird term. It is a little bit more of an adjective than a genre a lot of the time, it feels like. But yes, you're absolutely right, Marty. Love or hate that album, that era of My Dying Bride has to come up tonight for sure.
Absolutely. All right, Justin.
All right, I'm going to jump on this grenade for y'all because somebody has to show this. And I apologize for any followers you lose, but
I'm scared.
This was
I was going to pull it because my wife owns it, but I'm not going to. I
actually, same here. Wife owns it. Thought about pulling it, but no, it's a good one.
Some of us have standards. Is what we're saying. We have standards.
My wife doesn't own it. I own it. I bought this motherfucker with my own money.
Here we go.
I bought it. This is the first one.
Oh boy!
I knew it was coming. And this is the first time it was.
We're just trying to get to 5,000 subscribers. Is it that hard to ask?
We were this close to 4,000. We only needed 50.
Then he pulls the Amy. What's her face card?
Amy Lee.
Yeah. Set us back 7 months.
It's like the Nickelback of Christian rock right there.
Oh yeah. This is when Goth went commercial. Oh man! But you were a kid in the Midwest. This shit rocked. This shit was a banger. This was before I found him and stuff, and I was like, "Oh, it's so cool." And then I found him, and I was like, "Oh God, no! Okay, this is what the fuck's happening here." But yeah, there you go. Evidence is solid. There's not much we need to say.
Is a co-conspirator here.
Yeah. No, it's actually, I'm glad you did pull it, Justin, because it's worth mentioning. It's become a meme over the years, but it did for Goth in the 2000s what The Crow did for Goth in the early 90s. It was a gateway. All of a sudden, a whole bunch of people like, ooh, I want to dress and kind of look like that and feel feelings like that. Full disclosure, I've never heard the full album. I've heard songs here and there, but love it, hate it or not, I mean, there's a lot of musicians from that era that cite that as the album that kind of started getting them exposed to Gothic music, and they moved on past Evanescence pretty quickly. Hell, let's face it, Evanescence moved past Evanescence pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But that album got a lot of people looking into other Gothic stuff. Even the lady, I should know her name, the female vocalist from Cradle of Filth,
Sarah.
That's one of the albums. She's like, yeah, that was one of the first things that I kind of got into. Like, oh wow, like there's a goth culture around this. This is awesome. From that album, led her to a career in Cradle. So yeah, well, it had an impact on people, whether even if it's not taken very seriously as an album, by a lot of folks.
Yeah.
Simon's having a rough night here, Simon.
So you touch on something that actually is important. In all seriousness, because I come from the Midwest, I grew up in a small town. All we had was the radio. And again,
where are you from in the Midwest?
Ozark, Missouri, outside of Springfield, Missouri. So near Branson, if you know where Branson is. And that
I've been through Branson.
Yeah. But of what we have, then there wasn't a lot we were exposed to. This comes out, and of course, a lot of the, it's the Bible Belt. So the Christian aspect made it where most kids' parents were like, okay, that's safe enough. Which then in turn, we're all like super deep into like black metal and shit. Now we went the complete opposite direction. But it was a gateway. And I love it because of the nostalgia. It's just radio rock. That's all it is. Radio rock with some blues and blacks thrown on top aesthetically. But it did open the door for a lot of people, as lots of different things through the years did. So it does get credit for that. I'll give it that.
They also do get one. They get 1 point for their true metal score. Their true metal score is 1. And they get 1 point because and don't ask me why I know this, but I remember a random interview clip with the vocalist where she told a story that for what was it? What's the song called? It's not "Pull Me Under." That's "Dream."
Wake Me Up.
Wake Me Up. Yeah. Apparently, or according to her, the record label leaned on them very hard to bring in some guest vocalist rapper to do the chorus to that song for them in full-on hip-hop style. And the band listened to it, looked at them, just said no. And it was like, no, you're doing this or we won't release your album. And the band literally told them, like, fine, then don't release our album. We are not doing that. That is not going to happen in our video on our song. And just forget that idea. We're not doing that. And they're like, this played out for days or weeks where the record company was threatening to pull their contract unless they allowed the chorus to go full on rap with a guest hip hop artist doing the vocals. But and she's like, I guess, we stuck to our guns long enough and called their bluff, and they finally backed off and didn't force us to do it.
Yeah.
So they get 1 true metal point for not allowing the record company to bring in. I don't know if they had somebody in mind or not, but the song could have had a breakdown by Snoop Dogg or something stuck right there in it for just a little bit. If they had wavered, that would have been part of their legacy.
It's kind of funny that because she caught so much flack for that record because Evanescence came out of the Christian scene. They were a Christian band, and that album blew up, and it's more of a secular type. And I'm feeling kind of proud of myself. The Nickelback Christian references it's pretty good. I'm feeling pretty proud about that one. But
it's proud the word you're looking for here, Marty.
I'm proud of myself. I don't. It doesn't happen often, but tonight I'm proud. That was a good adjective. Anyway. Someone had to do it. Thankfully, it was Justin.
So I'll lose Vesteban Blood Box subscribers. Their channel shouldn't lose any. So.
Actually, there's I want to welcome Sean tomorrow. I've never seen you in the chat before. Welcome. There's the Wound Man. There's some people that aren't normally in the chat. Welcome. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe. We do this weekly. There's all sorts of crap going on every week. So. You like the content, hang out with us. We really appreciate it. It helps out the channel a bunch. And sorry about that. Anyway, I just want to say welcome to new people in the chat. Yeah. It's cool. It's cool to see new folks.
That's awesome.
Alan.
All right, I was going to do a kind of a less metal one, but after that, I feel like I need to get more metal.
you feel dirty.
Bring back our
you need to-
credibility.
No, I want to split the difference. We'll go with one that we'll kind of go in between here a little bit. Once again, showing that even power metal is not immune to Gothic influence and aesthetics.
Camelot. I knew it. I knew it.
Absolutely. This band, they released a couple albums in the late 90s, didn't really get any traction, swapped out vocalists and started wearing more black and writing more songs about
doing magician shit with their hands in the photos.
Like,
come hither, all magic wanderers. Yes.
Come with me, take my hand, and I will follow me into the darkness.
Dude, ever since
that just happened.
My finest moment is the Camelot. If anybody has not checked out the Camelot review, go check it out. Alan did a great one. Him doing the hand thing and me working him into the Camelot band photo with the lead singer doing the hand thing was my finest Photoshop moment. Just wanted
Simon, if ever there was a night for someone to be dying on stream, it's the Goth night.
The Goth night. There's no hot Goth chicks here. It's just us fat old guys. Well, not all of us are fat, just me. Anyway, Alan, sorry.
No worries. But yes, so Camelot definitely started cultivating a much more Gothic image. This was a band also that even though MTV's heyday was long gone, they still always had a presence with videos, even pretty early on with YouTube, really embracing all the sort of darker aesthetics, more of those kind of lyrics in the songs, the sad wistful kind of stuff. The brooding, introspective. I read Edgar Allan Poe in my den in the evening.
I think of Edgar Allan Poe. I think of Manila Road. Just the way it goes.
But anyway. It worked extremely well. Hey, this copy is even autographed. Saw the band a couple of times.
Did you bewitch him with your spells to get him to sign that?
No, my wife and I kind of went fanboy and fangirl. Not going to lie.
They signed it because of Mel.
Oh yes. Oh no. Anytime we ask for autographs, it's very much like you were cute and bubbly. You ask them and they will sign it. If I do it, they're going to take out a restraining order.
She asks and you put the insert down underneath her, like, here you go.
Just kind of slide that over there while she smiles and makes cute Bambi eyes at you. But yeah, Camelot does it extremely well. It works in their music. They bring in lots of female vocalists from these kind of Gothic symphonic bands we've talked about. Simone Simmons from Epica's guested with them several times. I think Floor Jansen has appeared with Camelot.
Isn't the lady from Epica married to one of the guys in Camelot?
I do not know. It would make sense as often as she shows up and as much as they've toured together. But yeah, again, you can't ask for much better Gothic imagery than Black Halo. Even they're so black, even their halo is black. Damn it! But it works quite well. It's why you have a lot of these other more symphonic metal bands that are usually the ones that embrace it. Camelot's background is much more as a straightforward 90s era European power metal project. They've got that, even though they're mainly based in Florida, that's more their jam. And they still have that the Gothic aesthetics worked into their stuff too. They did a ton of classic albums. They had a new one come out this year as well. Like Marty said, we reviewed it on Heavy Metallurgy. It's their best album in a number of years, in my opinion. They really did a great album this time. So if you heard the band back in the day and kind of lost track of them, now's a good time to check them out.
All right.
Cheers.
Getting your electrolytes, I see. Anyway,
warm Gatorade from a wine glass. That's Gothic. That's sad. Now I'm sad.
Well, I'm going to show these because Justin already hinted at it, but Paradise Lost had a bit of a goth moment.
Mm-hmm.
Draconian Times. This is an expertly written album. Every song on here is catchy as shit. Endless earworm in that Gothic vein. I remember when this record came in. This is a promo, Hole Punch. This album, I've said it on here before. I listened to about 3 seconds of it, it laughed, took it out, and threw it in the garbage can. Like, this is absolute garbage. No one's going to want to listen to this crap. And then I'm like, well, I got to review it. I should probably take it out of the garbage can. And I started listening to it. This is earworm, even more so than Draconian Times. It's like a little more synth poppy here in spots. But I do enjoy this era of Paradise Lost. I'm glad they're back doing what they do really well. Nick growling, he's got a good singing voice and a good growling voice. Unlike Aaron from My Dying Bride. I know if TJ's watching, he would be flipping tables at me saying that, but he's just got a good voice all the way around. His growls are awesome. His clean voice is very, very, very good. But this is probably one of my favorites in the Paradise Lost catalog. This thing is so catchy. I'll lay it up to you, Justin. Did you want to go on about this in any way, shape, or form?
No, you pretty much hit it. I mean, I've listened to Draconian Times a lot. October
It's
Rust
so
and
good.
Draconian Times are the pair that come out when like it hits about 50 degrees in October. That's it.
This is what, 1990 shit.
95 or 96 for
95.
Draconian
I mean,
Times.
it's very, very perfect for the 90s, man.
And they didn't, to be completely honest, with Paradise Lost, because I've been going back through stuff, Draconian Times is really the main one I've listened to. They have an era where they kind of go post-punky too, don't they? Almost electronica? Or am I
They went on, I think the album is called Host. I don't own it, but it went pretty much electronic on that.
Yeah.
That's the one with the bees on the cover, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
That's
I believe so.
Okay.
They did one or two albums in that vein. One for sure, maybe two. There's a chunk of Paradise Lost after this that I jumped off. I didn't care anymore, but I came back around when they started getting heavy again.
Yeah, there's a really good deep dive over on the Dark Path channel with our buddy Matt. He covered Paradise Lost in great detail a while back. So if anybody really wants to know which albums fall into which category, that's definitely the video to go check out. I know he mentioned that a lot of people feel like they're quote unquote non-metal phase stretched out forever. I remember him saying it's actually a relatively short period in their history, that there's only a couple of albums that completely straight outside the box. But yeah, 1 Second's a great one. Like that album quite a bit.
And as someone said, I lost who it was. Yes, it sounds, the first time I heard Draconian Times, I'm like, is that James Hetfield? It sounds so much like him.
But better.
Yes.
Somehow better.
In tune.
Yeah, in tune. Yeah.
I think that was one of my issues with Draconian Times. I got it at the time and remember it was okay. I felt like they were maybe trying a little too hard to like, hey, we want to be popular too. We can make an album that's, that Metallica's popular. Let's sound more like that, like a Hetfield. Like, don't do that. Please don't do that. Yeah. Boo. I throw my red Gatorade in your face.
All right, Justin.
All right. The theme of the evening, it's not really goth, but it's goth enough to throw in here. But it's Finnish. It fits in the era. It's the 2000s, and Tanner's going to love me for putting it up here. But this era of Fall of the Leaf, particularly Vantage, this album. Not goth in, of course, the aesthetic of it, but it's really in that same vein of like Charon, the band I showed earlier, also Finnish. It fits in that. And interesting, because this band was straight up black metal with Evanescence Ever Fading, and it's Evanescence.
That album rules. So if you listen to Evanescence Ever Fading, you can hear where Obsequiae got a lot of took a lot of notes.
Yes.
Very much so.
And it's a great black metal album. But they pretty quickly, each of these albums progressively gets out of the black metal realm into the more poppy goth stuff. Again, Vantage, this is one of my all-time favorite albums ever. It is perfect front to back. And Aerolith, which is this one.
I've not heard anything past Evanescence Ever Fading.
Oh, do this one. Now, it's not metal. So when you listen to it the first time, it's like, okay, this is what it is. But it's that Finnish goth sound. It really is. Great band, should be more well known than they are, but I am throwing that on in the ring here.
That's one I've been meaning to check out, so I'll keep that one in mind. Just
Vantage,
never gotten around to that band.
Yeah.
All right.
That's good stuff.
Alan, what have you got? to show?
Yes, I think Justin mentioned this band earlier, and I want to mention it because I like this album, and I actually like this band. Now, we're definitely outside of the gothic metal box completely, and not really even in the gothic rock box. This is getting a little more into the electronic side of things we've mentioned. Depeche Mode definitely played on that, kind of, dark imagery and lyrics and vibes.
That's a
and
good
stuff.
record.
This is a very good record. It's my favorite by them, Black Celebration by Depeche Mode. And yes, I know this is a band that is a big turnoff for a lot of folks. If it's not your thing, that's okay. But for a long time, I didn't want to listen to this band. This was the kind of band that I'd remember, like, girls in high school or college would be kind of like giggling about it in the back, like, hee. Do you think the singer's really a vampire? I heard he sleeps in a coffin. Hee. I'm just like, kill me now.
Which is translated, which is code speak for does a lot of heroin and passes out in a toilet somewhere.
Again with the toilet tonight. You're really
in the bathroom. I meant a bathroom, not toilet.
Toilet's in the bathroom tonight. But eventually, I did notice over time that there actually were metalheads that liked them as well, and would talk about them. Like, okay, maybe I need to give this a chance. And I did. And it's like, okay, I take it back. This has actually got some stuff going on. This one, I like a lot of their albums, but this one in particular, has, a little darker tone overall. It's in some of the other albums and songs too, but this one always just gels together so well. Just saw, it's been a long time since I played, but flies on the windscreen and stuff. Just like, yeah, that's getting kind of bleak there for sure. So once again, we see that would you call Depeche Mode gothic rock? I don't think so. Do they definitely have, a big gothic component, to their catalog? Yeah, they do. So makes a good adjective. We're having some trouble maybe pinning it down as its own genre, but it definitely, it's interesting that, gothic seems to apply to so many different types of music. I've even been seeing things lately about gothic country bands. I have not listened. I'm
it's a real thing.
Serious. I don't know anything about
like
it.
Those poor bastards? Would they be considered?
I don't know anything about it. But it's just I've been seeing it start to pop up in conversations in other places about oh yeah, there's like this this new band's coming out. So I'm like, oh, well, what's that? Gothic country? It's like, so they only wear black cowboy hats? How does this work? I don't know. But it is a thing. Apparently, it's even country music, is getting visited by the goth influences. So there we go.
I think that is kind of, it's more geared towards actual country music, but it's touching on the Fields of the Nephilim vibe, like the modern goth country. Like that's kind of coming back around in that more folk than in sound and aesthetic, but it's there a little.
I gotta say, we talk about the spaghetti western country thing when referencing Fields of the Nephilim. Listening to the first, like Dawn Razor, it's not country. It's got like a hard edge to it. It's heavy. It's weird. All the guitars are pseudo distorted. That's the closest thing you can pull from is country, I guess. I don't know. David Vincent country? No.
It's more aesthetic, like it's the hats and the outfits. The sound is not very spaghetti western at all. There's hints of it, but
all right, I guess I'm up. I tried to find one that maybe no one has ever heard of, and I've always really, really, really liked this record. This is a band I've never investigated past this promo, but I really like this one from the Netherlands, Orphanage, by Time Alone. Again, you've got, the band lineup that looks like Earth, Wind, and Fire, where there's 1 million people in the band. You've got the heavy death vocals mixed with the pitch sung lady vocals and some synth work on here, kind of a gothic vibe, but the music is really catchy and heavy. It could fit right perfectly in with that Sirenia record I showed earlier. This is kind of when year did this come out? Is this going to tell me? November 1. Why would they give relevant information like a date that on a promo? That makes no sense. Anyway, DSFA Records. I don't know, that's long dead, but this was very much a thing during the early 2000s. Lady vocals mixed with death vocals, some synth work, catchy, heavy, Beauty and the Beast type of thing. I dug this record. It's very, very, very catchy. Hi. Sorry, my dog just came in. Check it out. Orphanage by Time Alone. If they put out anything before or after, I don't know. That's the only thing I own by them, but this is a good record. We're checking out.
The album cover and the name fits very well. That seems very, very gothy.
Yep. And it looks like Trevor Perez here moonlighting a little bit. That's not him, but it looks like him. Anyway, from Obituary. Never mind. Next. Justin.
So we're kind of in the modern era now. So now it's going to be all sorts of stuff that from the last 10 years, I'd say. I got to thank Rick from the Dreadful Minutes.
Did you kick him out?
No, I didn't touch anything, actually.
Yes, I hit a button.
Oops. There we go. There we go.
Okay.
No, actually, there was a sound outside because the cats are playing outside my door. So I was looking over there and looked back, and suddenly I'm on camera.
You're smiling. You had a shit-eating grin, like you said, "Fuck that guy." I'm kicking him out. I'm putting him in timeout for a minute.
Oh no, we got the cats a new little tent toy, and they're literally out there just diving in and out of it, making a ruckus.
He somehow survived the Evanescence thing, but all of a sudden, Alan's kicking him out for this.
I thought he was about to. He said the next 10. He said the next 10 years, I thought he was about to show the second Evanescence album. We have to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah,
it's the Evanescence career. That's the rest of the show. It's just
even Evanescence drew the line at the second album. They're just like, here it is, bye, we're done.
So I don't know where I got cut off, but
you thanked Rick from the Dreadful Minutes. Yep.
Yeah. Sent this to me in a VCLT and actually worth some money now because this band had to change their name. Now they're called Unto Others. This is when they were Idle Hands, which is what they originally were.
Oh, yeah.
So these guys have exploded.
It's kind of a black metal type, depressive black metal, isn't it?
A little bit, but they are playing into the goth vibes, particularly the 2000s kind of goth sound. That's kind of the weird thing that happens with this is it becomes a copy of a copy of a copy. So it's kind of a new thing, but you hear the roots of where it comes from.
Where do you put let me ask you a question here, since my OCD is off the charts. I see you've got it all like Dewey Decimal System coded and shit.
Yeah.
But the fact that your CDs are in a book, that's a hard pass for me. But where's the tray card artwork and stuff?
So I've got a box full of all that. I've got a 300 disc CD changer.
This is not acceptable. So this is not acceptable.
My vinyl is meticulous, but I definitely the CDs they're
you have a 300 disc. Oh no, yeah, this is not acceptable.
It's not in any order either because it's next to Kenny Loggins' Child album. So.
Oh my God. Jason Hook is like, yeah, power to the people. Yeah,
he gave me the courage to do it this way. So, but yeah. So in the 300 disc changer, that's what it's like a karaoke system.
You hope that thing never dies. It freezes up. You're fucked. You're fucked.
Have to smash it and get all.
You have to smash it like yeah. Oh my God. In fact, Simon says that's worse than Jason Hook. I don't know.
Man. It's a. I could not tell you where anything is. I've got the WWE soundtrack. It's all over the place.
Oh, I can't. All of a sudden, I am so irritated right now. I can't even believe it. I am mad. I'm actually angry.
I did this to watch you squirm, and I am enjoying every second of it.
Oh, I just put the tray cards in a box somewhere. What? If you want to sell it, you want to sell that CD, you got to dig through the box. This might be it. I don't know.
It's fine. Well,
Justin,
and some of them,
you're one of those guys on eBay. He's always selling like you have a lot of 5 CDs. It comes with no artwork, no cases. You just put up wrap a rubber band around them and put them into like a bubble envelope. That's you. You're the guy.
Well, and some of them don't quite fit, so I folded them up so they'll fit in the back appropriately. So
I like the ones too that trim the edges off just a little bit because it's like 3/16 of an inch too long. So if you just trim one of the edges, then it fits fine.
Exactly. See, because it doesn't, the back doesn't fit in the perfect square, so you got to cut it down a little bit.
Or just put it in a fucking jewel case and buy a house that's bigger, where more space where you can put your shit.
I was gonna say I'm out of room. My cassettes and vinyl are meticulous.
Sort this shit out. Figure it out, Justin. God. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Simon's no good, very bad, horrible day continues.
I'm gonna try to let this go and let you continue on about this Idle Hands band.
It's beautiful. Where the fuck was I? Idle Hands. On two others. Great. It's good shit. Yeah, you probably have heard of it by now because they're like really getting big and shit. But very, very good stuff. New album's really good too.
When was the last time you dialed up track or CD number 174 on your 300 disc Pioneer system? That is the biggest, dumbest thing ever made. And the fact that I know you got it from Goodwill. You probably got it from Goodwill for a quarter.
I did.
Whatever. That doesn't mean it had to come home with you. Oh, I've got this great filing system idea. I've been waiting to work. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no. So see, you can chain them too. So if I find another one, I'm going to stack it on top, so I can have 600 CDs and a box full of 600.
What a fucking glorious day that'll be! Wow. The rapture will have come.
Yes. Everybody watching, just for reference in the future, understand this is the point in time where Marty has decided we're going to have to start fully vetting people before bringing them onto the show. So if you've been waiting for a chance to appear on Heavy Metallurgy, the bar just got a little bit higher.
Everybody's got their own system for the size restrictions of their man cave. I get it. But
this must provide a video tour of your man cave room, so Marty can
this is rough
equipment ahead of time.
Oh,
there's no 300 disc changers or a random shoebox peeking off underneath your desk.
A shoebox filled with mice turds with all your J card, your tray things are in there. Maybe a couple of them are chewed up by the mice. There's a couple chew marks, some turds. Oh, anyway.
Between this and the Evanescence, I'm going to be a fucking meme by tomorrow. Oh, my God.
See, so there's a chance he can get that 600 daisy chain going. That would be a fucking day to be long remembered.
A whole rack. I want 10 of these things.
Yeah. Anyway, were you done talking about Idle Hands? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail.
They're great. Check them out. There's not a lot to talk about them, but thank you to Rick for sending me those because I have thoroughly enjoyed that band. So that is one to check out in the modern times for sure.
Thank you, Rick, for sending that. It's been filed into obscurity and forgotten by time and dust. And when that CD player eventually dies, it'll be given back to Goodwill. Full of CDs, some little Easter egg for some little burgeoning metalhead to stumble across. Oh, Evanescence and Idle Hands. Woo! Anyway, Alan, I'm sorry. I've had a few to drink. Sorry. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Oh. Let's look inside this jewel case and see what we've got next.
Oh, look, a CD. Imagine
Incorrect. Incorrect.
There's a CD in this case. What a concept.
The hard, shiny plastic part protects what's inside.
And I bet you found it in the W section.
Everything about that's too tacky.
While Heaven Wept? Is that what it was?
Okay. It is in the W section.
So, I mean, like Jason Hook.
On the power metal shelf, which is separate from the other genre shelf.
Jason Hook and Justin should become a power couple and get together and combine their powers together, like the Justice League, their Justice League of shitty filing systems. Anyway, go ahead, Alan. I'm so sorry. I got on a tangent there. My OCD has been triggered.
Marty's having a rough night.
Justin, I love you. It's all good. I love you, brother. It's all good. I'm just picking on you.
Oh, this is funny.
But yes, a band that does not get discussed as much these days, but should be, While Heaven Wept. This is another one that shifted styles over time. Their first album, I think it's Sorrow of the Angels. Some of their early stuff plays a little bit more on the Peaceful 3 sound. Some slower songs, deeper vocals, going a little more for that kind of big, sad, symphonic sound. It's a lot of folks love that era of the band. For me, it's not my favorite stuff from While Heaven Wept. Yeah, very good doom band. But for me, they got better around this time when they switched to cleaner vocals. But once again, they still had a lot of this kind of gothic imagery. The album is called "Of Empires Forlorn." How many statues are we going to see tonight? Or shadowy silhouettes of sadness and things.
The final embrace.
Song titles, The Drowning Years, Voice in the Wind, which is, I'm pretty sure that one's a cover song, but it's beautifully done on here. In Eternum, Soul Sadness. They cover Epistle number 81 from Candlemass and do a gorgeous job on it. Sorrow of the Angels is on here. Once again, I don't think you call them a gothic metal band, but they're checking off several of the boxes. Now, they didn't really go for a lot of the visual aesthetics in terms of stage attire or anything like that. Tom Phillips never really went in that direction. But a lot of the other elements are there with While Heaven Wept. They did several good albums in a row, starting with this one. By the end, this band unfortunately kind of collapsed under their own weight. They just too many members, too many schedules that wouldn't line up when it came times to record or rehearse. And so, eventually the band just kind of, ground to a halt. But they did some really cool stuff. But this album in particular, you just don't hear a lot about. People tend to like the first one if they're into that style. Or they want to talk about Vast Ocean's Lacrimose, which is incredible.
Was that the one you sent me? Because that was really good.
Yeah, that's the one I sent you, Marty. But awesome. Of Empires Forlorn, the in-between one, it's the middle child, so it doesn't get quite as much love. But a very cool release. Got to see the band play live one time over in Georgia, and incredible show. They did a great job. So once again, kind of doom metal, trad metal, and yet there's this gothic component that works with it as well. All right, Marty, if you've got your blood pressure, everything back under control.
I've reset. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was just having fun at Justin's expense there.
Before I handed you the mic, I wanted to make sure that we kind of.
I love Justin. If I was here, I'd be giving him a big hug. I love that guy. Good guy.
We all know what's up.
His filing skills suck, but it's all good. Next up, this band, maybe this is early. What year did this come out? It seems like after this band kind of started gaining some traction is when a lot of bands started kind of following suit. We got Moonspell. Wolfheart's probably my favorite by them, actually.
Oh, yep.
Irreligious. I've got a handful of others on promo as well. Can't deny the gothic vampire thing. What's his name? What the fuck is the guy's name? The singer. He sings like Count Chocula. It's a blah, blah, blah.
I am a Portuguese vampire.
I'm a Portuguese vampire. I like marshmallows in my cereal. Type of thing. Which is always kind of
cases and put them into a box for all eternity. I use them to line my coffin.
Use them to line my bird cage. Count Chocula rules, yes. And Zachary, Alma Mater, best song on this album. It's the closing track. Is it? No, it's not. Second to the last track. Great song. But here's where they started to get a little more gothic-y, a little more, Anne Rice, Count Chocula. Fernando, that's right, Fernando. Oh, yes, her breasts were exposed. The blood ran down them. Blah, blah, blah. That's Moonspell. Very much gothic. Had to show it. I don't have... This is the only one I ever listen to whenever I pull this band. The rest of it, I care less about, to be completely honest.
Kind of the same here. I think Wade mentioned earlier that he's going to be seeing Moonspell live here pretty soon.
And I guess I hear they're really good live, too.
Mm-hmm.
Alma Mater, it's a great song. Totally great song. Okay, Justin, I'm sorry. Right. I didn't mean to pick on you, brother.
Oh, yes. I love it. It makes me feel loved.
Okay. So. I'm just trying to get you to learn something.
I'm doubling down. It's going to get so much worse. I'm going to send you daily photos.
Marty's not mad at you. He's just disappointed.
Daddy's disappointed. All right. So, 2010's on kind of like everything with metal and all sorts of stuff. Explosion of new music. So this is a band that It's come out recently. Really, really good. I think they're on Prophecy Productions. I'm pretty sure. And Prophecy's kind of digging into some of that darker sort of goth stuff. But this band, Sisters of Mercy, and when I was looking through this today, actually Fields of the Nephilim, it's in there too. Soror Dolorosa, particularly these two albums. Really, really solid 80s sounding goth. What makes it that is it's heavily reliant on bass guitar, and the guitars are mostly really atmospheric over the top of it. They're almost an accent, and it's the bass and the drums that are driving the songs. And this lead singer, he does a good job. I don't think any of these have a picture of him.
It really could be said, if we take it back to the beginning of the show, one defining factor of goth is usually a very audible plodding bass.
Yes,
it's kind of a thing.
Yep.
And sometimes like just muted too. Like again, it's prominent. It is a driving force of it.
Yep.
And I don't know what this album cover is, but this reminds me too that goth has this strange thing, and I think it goes back to the vampire type stuff, but you get either like European castles and things like that, or it's Egyptian, which I think comes from the whole Anne Rice vampires come out of Egypt sort of thing. This always reminded me of that.
Well, spoiler alert, dude.
Shit! Oh God, this is going off the rails. Anyways, Soror Dolorosa, absolutely want to check out for modern goths. Really, really true to the 80s start of it. These could have come out in 86 and would have fit quite well.
All right. Alan.
Oh, okay. I'm going to go back for an oldie, but a fairly goodie. It's one of these band names you often hear mentioned, but folks really circle around to them. But really, really early in gothic circles, 45 Grave. This is their first and for a very long time only album, Sleep in Safety, which seems like good advice. Always kind of a strange album title. But this band goes way back into the 70s. They had roots in the punk music scene. But by the time they started releasing a couple of singles and stuff in the early 80s, they very much had kind of a goth veneer to them. And this is an example of one where it was a bit tongue-in-cheek. While they were definitely leaning into the imagery and stuff quite a bit, this was a band where they had the goofy pseudonyms. And one of the best ones, the female vocalist, was Dinah Cancer, which I always thought was just brilliant. First, you don't really hear a lot of women named Dinah anymore, so it stands out already. But the fact that she managed to find a way to play off that, it was always just like, yes, you must use that name now, absolutely. Musically, it's what you kind of expect from that very early years of goth. And this again is where you get into was it death rock? Is there a difference? Does it matter? But they technically even predate Christian Death as a U.S. unit that's working very much in gothic territory. And as such, the songs vary. You have some on here that are meant to be a little creepy. You definitely have songs that are still drawing on the punk vibes. You still have there's at least one tune on here that still has a bit more of the surf rock thing going on. I think it's literally called Surf Bat. So it's kind of a fun listen. I'm not going to claim it's the greatest album ever made, but it's another good example of where goth was at in kind of the very formative years. Some people in the chat have made the comment that, again, like a lot of other musical styles and movements there through a lot of the later 20th century, a lot of stuff came primarily out of the UK and England, but the US did have bands that tinkered with those things too. And 45 Grave was one that started out a lot earlier than most of the other bands we think of. Again, we think of Sisters of Mercy and Fields of the Nephilim being influential. This band was already formed a decade before that and knocking around the scene.
I love that album cover too. That's awesome.
Yep, plays again right into sort of playing into the imagery, but having a little fun with it.
All right. Again, I have a hard time classifying this band as goth, but they kind of strike me as kind of beyond that classification. Dead Can Dance. I'm a big fan.
Glad you put that in there.
Big fan. I've got everything except for the latest one. I don't own that one yet. And what's it? The Star one. What the hell is it called? Star Chaser. Don't like that one that much, but you can't look at that cover and think that it's not a goth. It's within the realm of Dying Sun. I've got their debut on vinyl. It's more of a post-punk type of thing. Great record. They started off as post-punk. They got really, these first couple albums are kind of gothy. A lot of hip, bass, holding down the fort where all these other things will go over the top. And as they progressed in their catalog, they got more world music kind of inspired. But this band is amazing. If you don't know what Dead Can Dance, the power it can hold, the Gladiator soundtrack where he's walking through Elysium, his hand, brushing through the wheat. You hear that ethereal voice in the background. That is, what's her name? Lisa Gerrard.
This is Gerrard, yeah.
She did some of the soundtrack for that album. The latest one is really good, Marty. Thanks, Mark. I haven't listened. I liked this one, although I think this was kind of this is what the fans want type of thing from us. If you are not a Dead Can Dance, you don't know anything about them, I would highly recommend this Best of A Passage in Time album. I've listened to this thing a million times. It pulls from a lot of good points in their whole era. So you get a really, really broad spectrum of their sound and what they're doing. And it also has the track Severance on here, which is amazingly depressive. Great song. These guys are great. Like I said, from post-punk to ethereal world music. These guys have kind of done it all. It's a two-piece with a bunch of very talented musicians surrounding them. Dead Can Dance, check them out. Awesome stuff. Awesome. Whether it's goth or not, the element is there. It definitely kisses the earlier stuff maybe a bit more than the later, but it's good.
It's a band I need to revisit this year. I used to have a couple other things on cassette, but I got it in a big pile of like non-metal stuff I was being introduced to all at once, and so it just never quite got the time it needed.
Yeah.
So so that's
I'm not in the mood always, but when I'm in the mood, they're perfect. That's all I want to listen to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll keep and see, that's the kind of thing I would have passed on the greatest hits thing, assuming that maybe this was a band where you want the albums that they're greatest hits might not flow quite right.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say it's pretty good, then I'll keep an eye out.
It's a great collection. And if you're just like passing through, you want to check it out, it's going to give you a good cross section of what they've done. It's really
okay.
And they're good song selections too.
That's where I might need to start then.
Yeah, and Dead Can Dance too. I mean, they pop up if you look up goth. They pop up in that realm, so they absolutely fit and have been massively influential. Especially when you look at some newer artists like Emma Ruth Rundle and Chelsea Wolfe, like they touch on that. And it's the same thing where like they're kind of welcomed into metal, though they're not metal at all. It's a lot of these bands too. Like it's not goth, but it fits enough and people want it enough that it gets put in there.
Yeah, if you're a metalhead, there's so much dark overtones in this Dead Can Dance stuff. If it's a good fit, it feels right when you listen to it. It doesn't feel like you're listening to an Evanescence record or something. It feels like you're listening to something dark and like it fits. It's in a totally metal adjacent type of style. Sorry, Justin.
Wake me when you're done, Marty.
I'm never coming back.
Oh, you're coming back. You're coming back.
Shit.
All right, Justin, you're back.
All right, so introducing newer stuff on the same thing. Saw this guy, and it is a solo guy. He has a live band that he plays with. at a Relayer is the name of the band. Who I worked with the guy long ago. I was a great band, but this guy opened Photocrime. He was in Coliseum, not the Funeral Doom band, the sort of hardcore. I think they were hardcore project, but same thing, kind of with Soror de la Rosa. This is directly Sisters of Mercy worship. He even posted a thing on Instagram showing he has every single Sisters of Mercy album. He uses a drum machine live in dedication to that, but really a really good interpretation of it because it's modernized. It's not stealing per se from Sisters of Mercy. He really does a good job of taking that influence, making his own thing with it. This, I think, is his best album. It's his first full length. He had an EP before this that was really good too. The ones that have come out since are fantastic, but this just hit the mark. Whole album front to back is really 80s goth worship. He's out of Chicago, I believe, and this album artwork was done by a Chicago artist who I think I might be a little wrong on this, but I think she did like BDSM artwork in the 80s. And that's where this comes from. She's well known. I'm just not particularly. I don't know her very well, and this kind of gets into like dark wave is sort of what it's labeled as you have the electronic aspect. But if you are into the 80s style of stuff, this is one you got to check out. Really, really, really good. He's a good dude too. He's online, and again, I think he played. I can't remember if he was the singer or played drums for the band Coliseum, but he's got his metal roots and went this direction. So, Photocrime, Principal Pain, fantastic stuff. Well, we lost Marty, who's our switcher here.
This one seemed pretty straightforward, and it's a rough night for some folks, but lots of other stuff.
What's wrong? What are we?
We were going to ask you. Are you okay?
No, I just remember something I wanted to grab.
Oh, okay.
What happened?
I don't know. It's all me.
Go.
There we go.
There we go. All right, Alan, you're next.
Okay, Justin's moving forward in time. I'm moving kind of backwards in time, but that's okay. We'll cover both ends of the spectrum. Even hardcore punk is not immune to having a kind of goth twist worked into it. And my example for this, TSOL with their Dance With Me album from way back in the day. I didn't look up the year on this one, but this was their second release. They had done a very short album or a very long EP. Keeping in mind this is hardcore standards, so the lengths are really relative. But before this, the first release, kind of straightforward hardcore stuff, kids, fucking around, tearing shit up. This album is really different from that. It's got this again plays a little bit more into that kind of the Victorian gothic thing. Songs on here, the Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and caves and bats and all kinds of weird shit. And a little bit similar to 45 Grave, there's a little bit of a surf rock influence in some of this, which, TSOLs, they were surfer jocks. They were, very much kind of, I don't remember if they were Orange County specifically, but, they were very much, that, kind of, beach scene, suburbs, hardcore vibe from Southern California. Jack Grissom being, really notorious. Let's go with character. Yeah, character. A really notorious character on the early hardcore scene. And so, it's just it was really odd, that they went very quickly from releasing, kind of a relatively generic hardcore album to this strangely very gothic influenced album. They started, even after this, they did Weathered Statues, and it's got, lots of, synth layers and stuff on it. So they definitely were doing more than just dipping their toes into the goth waters. They were really messing with those ideas. I know I read one interview with Grisham from years ago that they actually had some of this stuff in their sound earlier, that they could have done this on their first release. At the time they were signed to Posh Boy Records, which did a lot of those early hardcore releases on the West Coast. And he said the band kind of knew that, the dude running Posh Boy was probably going to rip them off in terms of, releasing it, not paying them, stuff like that. So they just kind of gave him a bunch of older songs to put on that release, and he's like, "Yeah, we're going to hold this stuff and get a new label and make sure it's properly and that we get paid for it." We didn't want to give him the new cool stuff, so we just gave him some. It's like, yeah, put out this old shit that we don't really play anymore. So yeah, once again, you don't think of hardcore and goth necessarily meshing, but there are bands that kind of worked in both those areas.
That's cool. I can check that one out too.
It's a fun album. It might sound a bit dated by this point in time. I haven't played it in ages, but yeah, it's fun for what it is.
All right. I was just sitting here remembered this one. Bands like apocalyptic folk can also have gothic overtones, and this is the only CD I own by this band. It ended up being Ordo Rosarius Equilibrio, but here this is Ordo Equilibrio. This is The Triumph of Light and the 13 Shadows of Love. This is on Cold Meat Industry, which I don't know, this might be kind of sketchy. I don't know for sure, but all I do know is later on I've seen some more recent videos that they're really fucking strange and perverted, kind of awesome videos. But this is definitely the apocalyptic folk era or type of music, but there's a goth element to this too, whether it's the fetish type. There's a lot of sex, war, and love type of overtones all mixed together in this stuff. This is the only one I own by them. I like it when I'm in the mood for it. This is good. Later stuff I've heard is also kind of appeals to me. Like I said, it's apocalyptic folk with a more of a perverted edge, but the whole fetish element of it kind of makes me think goth overtones. That's I was sitting here thinking about it. I said, well, I'm going to grab it. Yeah, exactly. A completely other rabbit hole, and the two styles can hold on to the goth category as well. So that's why I wanted to grab this. Alan picked the hardcore thing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to branch off a little bit here, but I can't speak super intelligently about this because, like I said, this is the only album by them I own, but I do respect it, and I do own some apocalyptic folk from Death in June to other stuff as well. I mean, Death in June is the easy one. I mean, anybody that's ever been curious about that sound has got a Death in June record. It's just the way it is. But Rose Clouds of Holocaust and What Ends When the Simple Shatter, or classic. Operation Hummingbird, good.
I saw it too.
I've already showed I've showed the whole collection earlier, TJ. You're just late. But yeah, this is a great album, and these guys are really weird and provocative, cool, perverted, sexual. It's good. There's a lot of things going on operating here, and it's kind of under the apocalyptic folk umbrella, but it branches off into other styles as well. Check out Ordo Equilibrio, and later on it's Ordo Rosarius Equilibrio. I think the guy that started this was with an old girlfriend, and then they broke up and it changed. I don't know, but if you want to watch some more modern recent videos, there's a really couple demented ones. I was impressed at how ill I felt after watching it. It was very, very strange. Anyway, Justin, I'm gonna go use a little boys' room while you guys talk amongst yourselves. I'll be right back.
All right, it's about that time where we're all having to pee every 5 minutes. I also am going through that. So, and you had talked a little bit too, but we kind of intentionally kept things a little more metal and also more like streamlined goth, but it is just again, theme of the night. We've said it a million times, wide branching genre, and electronica is a huge part of that. There's just no way to cover everything. So understandably we kept it on other stuff, but this is a newer project, came out in 2012, called Trust. It's just spelled TRST. Electronic project, I believe, out of California. EDM, I would say, is this guy's general vibe, and that's also kind of a broad term, kind of techno. But this album in particular is sort of it's the baby of modern goth techno. If that makes any sense. Really good. slow, moody, completely electronic, some vocals that are real interesting. The way he sings is interesting. If you listen to it, you'll know what I mean. But really good. The 90s had a huge club scene. The 80s had the UK goth club scene, and the 90s really, it got brought over to the US, and you get a lot of industrial mixes with goth a little bit in that era. This takes that and slows it back way down. It's a weird one. This album is also strange because it's only been pressed once, but it keeps popping up. So I don't know if they're making other pressings or if they just keep finding them or if they're releasing them in short batches. But if this is something you like and you're interested in, if it's for $200, just wait. It'll be on Amazon for $10 in like 6 months. So,
what is this? What is this I'm looking at?
Trust. It's spelled TRST. It's completely electronic from 2012. This guy's other stuff is more like EDM, but he created this album, which is really gothy, and it's kind of the, I can't think of the word, the godchild or something of modern, like electronic goth. So it's one worth checking again in the modern wave. This is sort of an underground favorite of a lot of the electronic goth people. So it's good stuff. It has that weird photo on the front. I think that might be the artist. I'm not sure though.
Okay, Alan.
I'll stay in the hardcore territory for at least one more pick here. And someone mentioned this, Zach, I think it was, mentioned this in the chat a few minutes ago. Sam Hain, Danzig was done with the Misfits by this time. Misfits, did kind of darker lyrical content a lot of times, but I don't know if anyone's ever really tried tagging them with the gothic vibe.
Is it Sam Hain or Samhain?
I technically do believe it's pronounced Samhain if you're using like the actual, was it Gaelic pronunciation? Yeah. But this is America, son. And in America, you pronounce it like it's spelled.
Right.
This is spelled Sam Hain, so we're going to call it Sam Hain. Somehow we're going from like, gothic to I went from red wine to redneck there in like 0.5 seconds. But at any rate, so yeah, Misfits get labeled with different things, but I don't think I've ever heard anyone call Misfits gothic. You might make a case for some of their real early stuff, like Static Age backwards. But when Glenn split off and started this project, he definitely was incorporating lots of different sounds. There's still obviously a hardcore structure to it, but he's using lots of like the big church bell gongs and more of the moody atmosphere kind of stuff, which kind of lends it a very kind of again, it's all the gothic aesthetics. Not necessarily incorporated into the music that's being played, but it's all wrapped around the music that's being played. They got the new mascot, the skeletal lady figure. The new having the kind of what would become the classic Danzig skull logo. There's blood, there's dark hair. It's checking a lot of the boxes once again. Same fun project. November Coming Fire's easily my favorite stuff by them, but I pulled this because it's earlier when I think they were maybe being a bit more experimental and trying out elements from goth and from some other styles to work into it. Always an interesting project. I am a Misfits fan first and foremost, but I can appreciate what Glenn was doing during the Sam Hain years also.
I count it because I did pull this to throw in there. It's not goth, but it's the Danzig stuff fits enough. I'd say more death rock, but it's Sam Hain definitely fits, and I think this works enough to fit in there too.
It's worth bringing up for sure. Yep.
All right. Well, we can't really talk about goth without showing these off at least. I mean, this is the only Bauhaus I own. Volume 1, Volume 2. These are great comps. I always found some people that are Bauhaus fans would say I'm talking out my ass, which I probably am, but I've heard some classic Bauhaus records, and basically all the good songs on those records are on these comps. it seems like every album I've heard, there's great songs and there's some so not so great. So I felt pretty I'll eventually pick up other Bauhaus records, but these are great. Like mentioned earlier on, Bauhaus were featured in The Hunger. It was a David Bowie movie. He was in the movie. It was a vampire movie called The Hunger, and they were like the house band in some club. And Bela Lugosi's dead. Most people will know that song. It's a classic.
Yep. Very first single too.
Yeah, it's the very first single, classic gothic track. Peter Murphy on vocals, who went on to a very excellent solo career. And after Bauhaus broke up, there was two bands, Tones on Tail, and end up being Love and Rockets. They're a little more poppy than Bauhaus were, but still some good songs. I like the whole era, but Bauhaus were great. These are two great. Again, I hate to be the listen to the greatest hits, bro, type of guy, but my Gothic collection is not that extensive, so I feel okay having these because it's a good, and it really covers a lot of really great territory on these. Both of these are just filled with awesome songs. So Bauhaus, you can't really talk about a Gothic show without mentioning them. So
fair, definitely fair. Yeah. I've like you. I've listened to a couple of their albums and just never really felt like they were the albums for me. It's like, yeah,
there's like always some key songs that are great, and then there's like a bunch of meh.
Yeah,
and then I find a lot of the good, awesome songs ended up on these two comps. So I don't know.
Well, it's funny because I'm the same way with Bauhaus. Like, the singles are what I like from them. Mm-hmm. I don't really care about anything else. It's the reverse for Susie and the Banshees. It's the only one I have. I don't care for the singles. It's the other stuff from them that I like. So,
yeah, I mean, Susie's got so much. Her catalog is so vast, but there's a lot of really good albums. A lot. Even the early post-punk type stuff is really, like the Scream and all that other stuff is really good too. But yeah. Oh yeah, they did. Which one is it? Ziggy Stardust.
Oh, nice.
Human Falafel. So yeah, and it sounds great. It sounds like a Bowie. It sounds like Bowie doing it. Peter Murphy just has that type of voice. Okay. Justin is back.
I'm back. Yeah. I'm getting down to my end here of what I've got.
That was my last one, but don't feel like you need to. If you have stuff, go through and cycle through them. It's fine.
No, actually, I'm going to do these kind of both together because I do want to give a shout out to Reclusion Records because they put out both of these, and it's kind of both spectrums of goth. So Edo, spelled EDO, this is your romantic, very classic, more 90s goth. Think of the way The Crow looked and then turn that into a soundtrack that makes sense with it. That's what this is. And they did, this artist did a cover of a 69 Eyes song too on a lathe cut, however you say it. So newer artist, but really pure European goth, if that makes sense. Really good, worth checking out, again, on the Reclusion Records label. And the Reclusion Records is a little more, it covers everything that's goth, but they do have a lot more post-punk on there right now because post-punk has sort of defined itself as its own genre coming out, even though it's still under the umbrella of goth. Like, modern bands really try to keep it more towards that 79, 80 sound. And this is one out of, I think, England, Nori, that kind of does that. Hints of The Cure on this, but definitely like this could have fit really well in about 79, 80. Interesting on this, the cover doesn't look goth at all, but the music fits a lot better. So another really good one to check out. Just kind of an end note on that, I guess, is with the goth genre, it is alive and well. And I would almost say more so than ever before. It's just not commercial anymore. But like most things are going, you have more people, indie people putting stuff on Bandcamp and things like that. But it seems like the younger generation is really picking out each of the, you have the industrial electronic version, you have the romantic version, you've got post-punk. They're like really digging into those niches and coming out with a lot of new work. There's a Chicago label too that's doing a lot of goth stuff. So it's alive and well. It's like everything, you got to dig a little bit to find it. But there's tons of great stuff coming out now. So
you got to dig to find it. And there's always you can always say it's never going to be as good as the classics, man. And that you can say that about anything, you know.
Yeah.
The fact that people still appreciate the style and are, keeping it going, kicking the can down the road. It's sometimes it's good enough,
Yeah. And it what happens too is it ends up sort of morphing into something new, because someone will take this and blend it with this and put in a little bit of this, and then we don't know what it'll be yet, but here'll be the next big thing that's underground,
Yeah. Yep. Sometimes your album, after all the time and era has moved on, you end up in someone's 300 disc CD changer
and then donated to Goodwill,
sitting in a shoebox under a bed somewhere covered in mice poop. And anyway, Alan,
respect.
You've made it. I'm saying you've made it. When that happened, you made it. You made an impact, bro.
One thing about living in Santa Clara, I never could stomach all the damn CD changers. There you go, Lost Boy fans. We got there.
Yep.
I'm going deep for the jokes tonight, trying to work them in.
Oh, that's good, Christopher. That's a good one. That Karak, Lamp of Murmur, Tribunal. All those are great. Those are great.
Yeah.
Goth.
I thought of that earlier in the week and then didn't pull it. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Christopher. That's
Tribulation.
Yeah, that's another good example of black metal getting a bit of a gothic influence. And would any of us be surprised if the next Kektarak album went even further in that direction? I wouldn't. Yeah. I know TJ's hoping they do.
Yeah, he is. He's the Bachelor Rose winner.
He's going to be holding 2 roses on the album cover next time.
So yeah, we're kidding, but we did a Kektarak album club, Wednesday album club. Go check it out. It's in the playlist. Go check it out on the channel.
Yeah, it's a cool band.
All
right. Yes, at the end of my stack here too. At least one more classic one to make sure we did touch on. We mentioned the band name once or twice, but didn't circle back to them. So Christian Death. This is usually the band you hear the death rock tag stuck on from the early 80s. This was their only Theater of Pain album. Long-running project, very complicated history. This is one where, again, yes, the band split, and Roz Williams was always kind of the creative force in the early days, but then he was sort of outed, and I forget the folks' name, but other members kind of moved forward with the name, and Roz did other stuff. Again, Matt over at the Dark Path has done an excellent detailed deep dive on Christian Death.
And it went viral. The Christian Death fans are rabid. They blew up that video for sure.
Yeah, well, again, it's a band a lot of people kind of know a little bit about and kind of like, but their history is a little difficult to unravel and figure out. And Matt does an excellent job, walking through the entire discography of bands like this. So I wasn't surprised. I'm really glad that, that one caught on and got a lot of views for him. But this band, again, their sound changed a lot, over the years as the, lineup changed. But, this is always, the kind of, classic early album from 82 that, this is always the band I said before has the death rock tag. If you're going to ask somebody what's a death rock band or album, if they are kind of in the know, this is probably the one that they're going to show. It's got Romeo in Distress and Spiritual Cramp, lots of songs that have become kind of fan favorites, going all the way back. It's not, I don't know a ton of this band's history after this album. I've had a few of their others over time and enjoyed them even for much later periods, but I've never really, worked all the way through their catalog or anything. But this is another one, kind of right there alongside Bauhaus, 45 Grave, very early, Gothic rock scene that was being developed.
Yeah, all right, Justin, solid. I'm going to kick it back to you because I'm out of bullets.
All right. Shit. Okay. Yeah. I'm getting back into it. I'm taking it back in. That's your fault. You didn't come prepared enough.
If only I had your Dewey Decimal System.
I've got a couple.
Oh, look at him flipping through the classics. He's not looking at photos, folks. Even though it's a photo album, it is actually a CD booklet.
It's actually just a bunch of nudie pics of myself.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect.
Is it more from the photo shoot of him? because we don't need to see that.
Yeah, I was trying, but I'm a lot more round. I'm more round than Filet Vallow is significantly. There's a couple things in here that are actually really good. But I'll pull this one out too. Another one, I think someone maybe mentioned this in the chat too. Lacrimus Profundere.
Oh yeah,
that's a great one. Actually, what the hell is his name? The guy from Thy Light is the one that introduced me to this because he saw I like goth stuff, and he's like, "Dude, you gotta check out this band." So has influenced some DSBM, modern DSBM, but really great album. And while we're on this page, same era.
True.
Fantastic. This one's also really, really cheesy 2000s goth. It's a super group. It's got one of the dudes from Charon, the keyboard player from Nightwish, a singer from another band, but they came together, and this is like the epitome of the finished version of Evanescence, if you will. Maybe a little better than that, but another one worth checking out. So
good old disc 115 and 116.
I have 3 of these bastards.
Oh no!
The Lacrimus Profundere.
Marty thought he was better. He's not.
I'm not. I can't let it go. I can't let. Yeah, Depeche Commode is in the chat, and he would love to see the version, the pictures in Playgirl with Peter Steele.
So it is on my list. So I'm throwing this out there to everybody in the chat. For Katie, who's my wife, for Christmas, birthday, whatever, someday I have to get her that Playgirl with Peter Steele in it, but the fucker is like $350 to $600.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah,
so if anybody has a hookup, hit me up because I have to get that.
That was, I mean, I'm sure Playgirl, that was mass produced. I'm sure there was a shit ton of those made.
It was mass consumed though too.
Yeah, true.
And it's, you know how it is. It's what, 30 something years old now, so they just get torn up. But yeah. They're ridiculously priced.
There, all the pages are stuck together. Alan.
Seriously, I remember Peter said in interviews, for years afterwards, he'd get handed copies of that, and some of them were a little gross to touch. Mm-hmm. All right, last one for me then. This is a very random one, and it's not but I'm never going to probably show it on any other episode of Heavy Metallurgy. This is probably the closest we'll ever come where I can show it. I don't know if you consider this band post-punk or just in that kind of general early 80s British style, but they definitely, again, they have some goth leanings. It's a band called Red Temple Spirits.
Never heard of them.
Nobody really has, but they made a couple of albums. This, I think, I'm shooting from the hip. I haven't pulled this off the shelf in ages. I think this is their second album. It's got a long title. It's called "If Tomorrow I Were Leaving for Lhasa, I Wouldn't Stay a Minute More." They had to write it in that size font just to get it onto the cover.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, maybe they needed a little help on that. Pretty cover though. I like the cover image overall when you can get past the weird title.
Reminds me of that Mission album too.
It does look like a Mission cover a little bit.
It does look like a Mission cover. It feels a little bit like, start with the Mission, but walk in, instead of going like goth goes a little more commercial, make it goth goes a little more dreamy and slightly trancy.
Okay.
It's going to be a rough ballpark. But again, they do have, it's not that the songs are really complex or overly psychedelic or anything. But, there's a little repetition, to the beats. The vocals are kind of, in a little more of a soft, soothing kind of thing. You can kind of get into that headspace a little bit. There's a couple of really good ones on here. A song called Soft Machine, probably, influenced by the old William Burroughs stuff. Dive In Deep is really good on this. There's just one of the random things that a friend, Natalie, who, introduced me to a lot of this kind of, non-metal, but stuff that metalheads will probably gravitate towards.
Rick has heard of this band. He's got the album before this one. Right?
Oh, okay, I've never heard that
to
one.
Restore an Eclipse Moon. The album before that one he owns that one.
Okay, I don't know that one, Rick. I'd be interested. I'll chat with you sometime about it. Would be interested to know how it is. Again, I haven't played it forever.
Of course you do. Of course you do. Ryan has the Paul Bailoff issue of Playgirl.
Okay, then.
All right. Anyway, Sorry.
But yeah, so if anyone's, just looking for something kind of obscure, if you like stuff, yes, like, again, a little more somber, mysterious version of the Mission, or I know I use this one as a reference point sometimes, but stuff like, early Chameleons UK, it's got, again, a little bit of that kind of vibe about it. Yeah, you poke around, it's probably on YouTube. Almost everything's on YouTube. But yeah, it's a cool band. I've never heard anyone mention them. So it's cool that Rick knows the band. And it's not something that's going to come off the shelf for other times. So wanted to slip it in as just, one of my random but kind of neat deep cuts. That, again, has a little bit of that. I wouldn't call it a goth rock album like Sisters of Mercy or anything, but it's pulling in a little bit of that, kind of, that mysterious vibe that we've talked about. That's part of the goth aesthetic.
That sounds cool.
And so with that, my stack is done. Marty has used his. Justin, are there any others that you would like to show? If so, by all means.
Before he does so, Zach pulled out a good one here. Mind Rot Dawning is a gothic death doom masterpiece. It really is.
And again, that's one I wouldn't have thought of, putting the goth tag on. But when I stop and think about it, yeah, Zach's right. That does have that kind of same ambiance to it.
There's a bit of a Fields of the Nephilim vibe on some of those vocals for sure. It's definitely cool.
Yeah, when Mind Rot, sometimes we're a little inconsistent, but their good songs are really, really good.
They're really good. Yep.
We'll do this one quickly. Just
you can run through what you got, man. There's no rush. They're not under pressure here. It's all good.
Well, we've gotten through them. I mean, everything else I have is just gonna be extra stuff I find. But we did touch on this, and I had it pulled. So for a moment.
Yep.
Because the Damned were they considered punk.
They're a punk. They're a punk.
You started as punk, but had other things going on.
That's not very gothic. I mean, there's a little bit of it on there, and David Vanian, or is that his name? He had dressed. He looked the part, but it was punk. I don't know.
Goth part of it. When did this come out? It was after Lost Boys. Yeah, it's the saxophone. Because every time I hear the saxophone in this, it's that sweaty, naked, muscular body jamming out on the pier in the Lost Boys, which is the best scene of any movie ever made. That's why I really put this the cover and the saxophone. That's what makes it goth.
Right on.
It's a good album though. It's worth it. It's a fun one to listen to. But that's it.
Are
that's
saxophones goth? We've established saxophones are not metal, but are they goth?
They're 80s, and the goth
there was some on the Fields of the Nephilim shit. The early, like on Laura and the early stuff is got some saxophone on it. The English love the sax. I don't know what it is. The English love the saxophone. I don't know why, but it was a thing. It was a thing for sure.
I don't mind saxophone. Just to be clear, I don't mind saxophone in certain styles of music. I've just rarely have heard it used to good effect in heavy metal.
Well, there is Sisters of Mercy too, because a lot of their stuff, especially from Floodland era on, there's all sorts of extra B-sides and tidbits of things. And from the Floodland era, there is actually a pretty cool tune called Sandstorm. That was on one of the singles. I think it was somewhere on there, and it's actually one of the first. I think it's a synth saxophone he uses on it, but it sounds
even worse. I suck so bad I can't play saxophone here. I'll go boop 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 boop. Saxophone.
I want my fans to go, Jesus Christ!
What the fuck?
If I wanted a robot Kenny G, I'd build the motherfucker.
Let it go.
Oh, but yeah, the Brits loved their saxophone in the 80s, that's for sure.
Poor Simon.
That was the last time Simon ever watched Heavy Metallurgy.
He's stuck. He's stuck with us.
His videos from this point on will strictly be bad action movies from the 1980s. No more music content.
Well, all right. We went through a pretty cool stack for sure. Justin, it was a pleasure, man. It was so good to finally have you on, and it would be great to have you on again, of course. And everybody, please go check out VestebanComics.com. Please go check out Vesteban's Blood Box, which the link is in the description for that. He has some really killer YouTube content. He's also been on some gas masks and hand grenades episodes as well. I think you guys did a typo negative deep dive.
Yep.
And did you do something else, or was it just the typo negative?
Nick Drake. We did
Nick Drake as well. Yes, absolutely. And yeah, is there anything you want to add, Justin, before we jump?
Oh man, I just seriously thank you guys. This was really fun, very natural. It's fun to hang out with you guys again.
Oh fuck yeah!
I've been out of the scene for a minute, so it's fun to be back a little bit.
And if anybody wants to see his handiwork in action, the heavy metallurgy shirts and necromantical streams, that is Justin's illustration. He's a very talented illustrator. Again, if your band or website needs some work done, go to vestebancomics.com and drop Justin a line. He would love to do some work for you for sure. Let's keep this guy busy for sure.
Yes,
thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you both so much. This was fun.
Alan, do you have anything?
The more work you give him, the less time he has to go looking for more Evanescence records.
Yeah. Those aren't hard to find.
The devil makes work for idle hands.
Or
it's hard to find in his collection if he wants to listen to it, because he has to access which book was that in. Oh, I don't remember. Let me get out my fucking Adidas shoebox. Start flipping through the fucking half chewed. Anyway,
all right, crowd. Hey,
why do you assume that Justin's house is filled with vermin?
Just whenever you open up a box that's been sitting for 1,000 years, it's half chewed and it has mice shit in it. That's just the way it goes. That's just the way.
He lives in a very nice neighborhood.
He lives in the north. The north is full of mice. When it's cold outside, the mice come in the house. I don't care how many cats you got. They get in. They shit in your boxes and they eat your CD tray card art.
It's true. So everybody watching, commission some work off of me so I can go to every Goodwill in town and find every 300 disc CD player, and we will ship them to Marty.
Dude, I gotta say, if you're not, you go on Justin, his Facebook and his Instagram, he's in the Minnesota, he's in the Twin Cities area. He hits this. He has found some killer shit. It never ends at Goodwill. It makes me mad. I go to my Goodwill down the road. It sucks. It sucks. A bag full of dicks. It is so bad. And he's like, "Oh, look what I found today. I found this whatever like piece of artwork for $5 that's worth $300." It's like it makes me so angry. He found Weaklings Dead as Dreams at Goodwill for 25 cents.
Yep. And the Replacements album on vinyl, their first one, almost near mint copy, that sells for like $75 for $2.
Yep.
So just to answer that person, the Atlantic Gallery in Manhattan, I think it's in the Midtown area. I'm not really familiar with Manhattan, but it is just like north of the financial district. So, but the Atlantic Gallery is where that'll be. And it'll be up from June 1st to I think June 17th, something like that. So, and one more thing too, just while we're plugging stuff, my Instagram is Vesteban Comics or at Vesteban Comics, and that's where you can see me post all the Goodwill stuff that makes Marty so angry.
It makes me angry. It's not as angry as this CD sit up, but it's just he's a lucky dude. He's found a lot of killer shit here the last couple of months. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's been fun.
But anyway, folks, we appreciate you all. Alan, do you have anything to add before we knock this on the head?
No, just it's been very fun hanging out. Lots of cool and interesting albums in discussion tonight. Thanks to everybody in the chat for also discussing it. And it's been a really interesting topic and a fun one to kind of dig into. We've seen it, Gothic definitely infiltrates lots of different styles. It may never be the predominant style for a lot of stuff we talked about, but it definitely has an impact across a lot of different genres of music.
For sure.
And show notes. Monday, Alan has a review coming up for
Rune Magic,
and a little mention of Mournful Congregation in there.
New Mournful Congregation EP.
Ben's got a review for the new Immortal coming up, and Simon sent a review as well. I don't remember what the band was. Sorry. Wednesday, the Album Club. We're going to be talking about Kardashev, Luminal Right, something like that. Yep. So join us Wednesday for our normal discussion about whatever album was picked. Justin, you rule. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with us. Alan, as always, you're the best. Thank you so much.
Been lots
And,
of fun.
Thank you all.
We'll see y'all next week. Cheers. Have a good one.